by, and then turn your tablet to mute. That. Whoops. Oh, I've lost mine. Here we go again. Whoops. Turned it on too early. It shut down on me. Here we go. Yep. And today's business. We're going to look in details our committee inquiry into wind energy. Look at really the main issues, because we really need to draft the report fairly soon. And then also we're getting a departmental briefing on the draft second cycle of the river basin management plans, and as well as a research piece of research from Susie coming to talk to us about EU funding. So that will be quite interesting. Apologies. Any apologies? Nope.
Ian's running late, Chair, because of the traffic. Ian Milne.
Okay.
And Barry McElduff sends his apologies, yeah?
Traffic heavy in Carrickmore.
Barry, yeah.
Is Barry?
Yeah, Barry sends his apologies. Ian's calling late now.
Ian McRae and Peter are running a bit late too.
Congestion
Okay.
in Carrickmore.
Okay. Yep. So you all have to stay put now, or we lose quorum. You're not allowed to move out of this room.
I hope that's not recorded, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Item 2 is chairperson's business. First item on that, members, is a letter from Queen's University inviting me to take part in a discussion panel on working with planning policies. That's really to do with an undergrad course at Queen's. So that's at page 5, members. Are you content for me to speak on behalf of the committee to take part on that panel? Okay.
And Chair, as long as you express all the views in relation to planning, Chair.
Yes, and bring
That's-
back
we're
some
happy
of bring back some of the mince pies.
But having said that, we utterly trust you.
That's right. It's on the 17th of December.
Yes.
That's actually during recess, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Members, then next item is tabled item, members. This is the Road Traffic Amendment Bill. The committee agreed at our meeting on the 9th of October that the Assembly Research and Education Service would set up an electronic survey to gauge the views of young people on the provision of the bill. So we have a draft press release there for members to look at. So seems okay to me. That's the first item, is all right, on the table paper. Yeah. Okay with that, members? Yes. Content? Okay, thank you. Next item, 2.3, also a tabled item. The Minister has notified the committee of his intention to make a statement to the Assembly next Tuesday regarding the outcome of the North-South Ministerial Council meeting held on the 5th of November. Okay, so I'm not sure what it is about, but I'm sure we'll see on Tuesday. Next item, 2.4, just to let members know, next week we are going to look at the financial scrutiny training, or we're going to have it, focusing on the budget process. This has been agreed by the chairperson's liaison group that all committees should receive that training, and it should be incorporated into the main items of a committee meeting. So that's going to happen next Thursday. So we have it fairly early on in the meeting, after maybe matters arising.
How long will that last, Chair?
Half an hour. Yeah. Okay. Members content to note that? Okay.
Yes.
So minute is at page 8. Members content to agree the minutes?
Agreed.
Okay,
Agreed.
thank you. Then on to matters arising, item 4. Members, you have on page 14 the Metros Rising of a note. Just maybe to bring to your attention, item 4.2 is correspondence from Quinn's Coach Limited. That's at page 16. At our meeting on the 11th of September, we considered a request from Quinn's coaches asking for a meeting in relation to the driver vehicle enforcement policy. And it was agreed that we should go back to them and ask for more information about what they really want to talk to us about. The company has now indicated that they have met with members on an individual basis and had a meeting scheduled with the Minister on the 4th of November. So he is now met with members and the Minister as well. So we have got their letter. Members, are you content if we just send their letter to the department for response rather than for us to arrange a
An
meeting?
individual case, isn't it? It's not really committee business.
They are talking
To-
about
to check.
policy, I think, aren't they? Yeah. But they said they've met with they have met with different MLAs. I haven't met with them.
Through the chair. Yeah, Chair, I met them and
Okay.
there seems to be, all right, there's an individual issue in relation to Quinn's, but I've received other contact from other coach hire businesses, and there is problems there.
Okay.
So, I mean, you were indicating you wanted to write back specifically, is that correct? I would certainly support maybe one member from each party to have a meeting with them. If the committee wasn't agreeable to meet and take the presentation, I would suggest that a member from each party, because there are underlying factors there. And I
Okay.
mean, no harm right across the department in terms of enforcement. There's issues, but there's certainly issues in relation to what's going on at the minute, and we need to tease this out and see exactly what's going on here.
Okay. Well, then maybe easiest is to ask them to come during a committee meeting then, because it's difficult to say a member from each party to turn
Well,
at
Chair,
a
it's like
separate
this here. These
meeting.
people are genuinely come to us that there's problems within the enforcement system on enforcement. Now, I mean, we need to find out exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
I can certainly meet them as an individual,
Okay.
but other members need to find out exactly what's going on with it. It's not as if it's a single issue.
Okay.
It's to deal with the department and how they're dealing with issues as well. So,
Okay. Lord Morrow, you want to come
Chair,
in?
just listen really, if this is a policy issue, surely have the coach hire business people, have they got an umbrella group? It might be better that if we're down into meeting each coach hire business, then I'm not sure where you draw the line at that.
Yeah. Okay.
And if there was, if they had an umbrella group that spoke for them, or they did some, then I would
happy
see
enough.
that as a better way forward.
okay.
Well, do you want us to go back to?
Yes.
So if you write back to me, just say if there's an umbrella group, I would support
Umbrella
that.
group.
Yeah.
Okay. A good idea. Yeah. I mean, we certainly wouldn't be able to meet with separate groups. Okay, next item then is at page 18, item 4.3, departmental letter regarding the waste operational plan. The department has now provided the committee with information on their waste operational plan. This is really as a result of the discovery of the Mowboy dump, and then, you know, with the Mills report. So the department then produced a waste operational plan. So they have now sent us that. It's quite interesting actually to read. So members, I know you're very interested to get updates on the Mowboy situation. So if we request regular updates on the situation, would that be good enough?
Chair, I think we should do it slightly different in this respect. Yes, this is one that we are very particularly interested in the progress. Could we request from the department that whether we receive automatically a bi-monthly or quarterly update without having to go and ask for it, so that this is put before us on a regular basis?
Yeah.
So I would suggest that we come at it from that approach.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think quarterly maybe would be fair enough to ask them to come and talk to us. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
ask for an update.
An update, quarterly update, a regular quarterly update
Yeah.
on that. Yeah.
And Chair, following on from that, some of us went to the trip in Belgium and Germany. In terms of the Regen, is it? What was it? Renew? is it?
Renew.
Renew, okay. And I think if we're serious about addressing these issues, I know this, we've seen a programme out there that would help address some of these problems going into the future, a longer term solution to it. And I think I'd like to hear the department's views on how they would like to take the whole waste, this whole waste issue forward. Maybe we get an indication from what the department thinks and how they're going to go forward in light of that trip and in light of some of their, obviously some of the officials was there as well, because it showed what can be done.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. They have now appointed a director, I think, on waste within NIEA. So if we get updates from that branch all the time, then it's not just then on mobile; it is on other issues as well. Okay, good enough. Yeah. Next item 4.4, correspondence from Finance and Personnel Committee regarding financial transactions capital at page 27. Our members intend to write to the department for information on their spending from the financial transactions capital budget.
Yes, absolutely.
I think the budget is so small though, but yeah, we'll ask them. Yep,
smaller.
okay. Next item, page 28, departmental letter regarding volunteer car schemes. Members, if you recall last time, I think Barry and I mentioned under AOB, I think, about this review of car sharing scheme. So we have now received correspondence. I suggest maybe we send this to CN and CTA and Volunteer Now and just see their view. I received now yesterday an email from CTA and Volunteers Now wanting to come and meet with the committee. So I responded to them and said there is correspondence and that we are going to send to them. So we'll see what their reactions are. If they still want, I think that is not the response from the department is not satisfactory, then we'll take it from there. Okay, thank you. Then next item's consultation. Members, you have a cover note there on all the consultations at page 31. Members, any comments on that?
Chair, there is one thing in relation to the plan and reform issue. Not that I have any issue in terms of the transfer itself, but we received a presentation here last week, and I have to say that I have grave concerns about the policies that's been transferred down to local authority, and I think they're going to have great difficulty dealing with some of those policies now. There was an indication from officials last week that in relation to PPS 21, the non-farm rural dweller, that ultimately councils, when they're forming or developing their area plans, they will deal with it. I mean, that's going to be a very, very difficult thing for local authority to deal with. There's no doubt about
I'm
it.
glad you're not a member.
And yes, I mean, I often said be careful what you wish for, because I tell you,
Yeah.
it's going to be difficult. And I'll be honest, if it's not sorted out in policy now, there's going to be great difficulties in the future.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's why I teased it out last week. But now that it's coming up, I mean, we need to, as a committee, seriously ask the Minister how he proposes to deal with this issue. Because no way he can hand the policy down as it sits at the minute.
Yeah.
And I know we're receiving the SPPS, but there needs to be something in it that addresses those issues.
The Minister's coming to the committee on the 4th of December.
Okay.
We add that to the agenda.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything is done in such a rush, that's the thing. Okay, then we moved on to item 6, synopsis of responses to the consultation on the draft Water Framework Directive. Priority Substances and Classification Regulations NI consultation on the proposed Nitrates Action Programme Regulations NI 2014 and revisions to associated regulations at page 180. Members, the aim of the EU Nitrates Directive is to improve water quality by reducing water pollution caused or induced by nitrates from agricultural sources and preventing further such pollution. The consultation period ran from 16th of June 2014 to 29th of August 2014, and 12 responses to the consultation were received. While the proposed regulations were broadly welcomed by respondents to the consultation, concerns were raised about some amendments, and in response to these, the Department made a number of amendments. DOE and DART are jointly responsible for these regulations. Just want to ask members, are you content for the Department to refer the regulations to the Executive, or does the committee wish to be briefed by officials first of all? Happy with it just going to the Executive?
Well, we were briefed on the 29th.
We've had briefings from them before on the Nitrates Directive. If members want a further update on it, I'm quite happy to do that. No? Okay. I think Lot Morrow, you were quite interested in it last time.
Yes, it was, but
You're happy enough for them to go?
well, I'm not saying I'm happy enough, but I think I would just park it here at this stage, and I would like to see revisit it. I mean, that was that not June?
June, yeah.
2014.
To August, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they then had to look at, I suppose, the responses, and now they've made a number of amendments.
And they're ready to do that.
And yeah,
Oh, then let's have them. Let's have it then. If it's, I didn't realise it was just that. Let's have it then.
let's have the briefing and
Yes,
see what
I
the
think so.
amendments are.
Yes,
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah. Okay, yeah.
And Chair, as part of the briefing, what impact it has on, obviously, the farming industry, and also what it'll cost overall to implement it. And I know it's a directive here, but I'm just...
Not sure, I don't think there would be a lot of...
Well, as long as they've, obviously
Yeah.
they have
Yeah.
to factor that
Yeah,
in. So
yeah,
that's,
yeah, yeah. I think they set the period when people were allowed to spread slurry and the distance where they are allowed to...
no, that's fine.
Yeah,
Chair, no.
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm sure we'll hear the details at a briefing from them. Okay, next item is synopsis of responses as well. Item 7 at page 230.
Hasn't appeared yet.
It's consultation on the filling of positions of responsibility and appointing councillors to committee. And Peter just arrived
We'll run.
dead on time. I know you're interested in this. Bring a coffee in quickly. So, members, the department carried out a targeted consultation with local government on draft guidance on filling positions of responsibility and committee membership. The department received 4 responses to the consultation, all of which stated that they were content with the guidance as drafted. So, members, are you content for the department to issue the guidance formally to councils?
Everybody
Or
else
wait
is
for
content,
Peter to
yeah.
come?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I am totally lost in the mathematics of it. Any comments on this, Peter? Sorry, putting you on the spot. This is item 7, page 230, on the way of filling up the position of responsibilities. Positions of responsibility and appointing councillors to committee.
Yeah, probably got some sort of to be fair, I haven't really looked over it, to be honest.
Well, I'll let you have a minute to look over it. 230. Because you were the one who
Chair,
guided
would
us
it be possible-
previously on this.
Could I maybe make a suggestion? Would it be possible if we are just negotiating, maybe do a couple of other items and come back to it just briefly then and give me a minute or two? just
Yeah,
to-
yeah, give you time to
Good
have
day.
a read. Yep, yep. So we'll move on then. We'll come back in a minute then. Let me see, the next one, next items are a couple of SL1s, a number of SL1s, members. The first one is to implement improved standards for child restraint systems in motor vehicles to improve safety for children. So, sorry, the next two SL1s are the same kind of on that. The committee considered a synopsis of the responses to this consultation at our meeting on the 3rd of April, and were content for the department to proceed with making the regulations. So the next one is item 8, page 254. It's an SL1 amendments to the motor vehicles wearing of seatbelts regulations NI 1993. The rule will be subject to the affirmative resolution. Are members content for the department to proceed with making the rule? Yes?
Yes, Chair, but it still needs to be enforced. It doesn't matter what regulations you bring in if people don't actually belt their children in. And you see more children bouncing about the back cars than enough
Yeah.
when you're on the roads, and I think it's something that needs more attention by
It
the
needs
department.
education and it needs
Yeah.
enforcement,
Yeah.
isn't it, of the
Yeah,
law?
Chair, bearing in mind that I think the police have said that the one of the main contributors to fatalities on the road is not wearing seatbelt.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Serious injuries or fatalities, yeah, yeah. I mean, if you don't have to constrain the belt, you just get thrown about, inside or
Then, as my colleague
outside
said,
the
if there's
car.
no enforcement,
Yeah.
it's not a
And you hit each other as well,
Yes, of course.
if you don't have the seatbelt. Yeah, 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 yeah. So, members content then for the department to proceed with making the rule? Okay. Next one is item 9, and it's also on similar things, on the similar scheme. It's an SL1, amendments to the motor vehicles wearing of seat belts by children in front seats, regulations NI 1993. And this is again subject to the negative resolution. Members, are you content for the department to proceed with making the rule?
Content.
Yeah. I think last time we did ask a bit about the cost. I think we were told it's really not going to be prohibitive. And also when people have the current seatbelt, then they can still use it. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I think that they're phasing out current child safety seats, and these will replace them on the market.
So it's only the new seats, when people buy them, they need to be adhered to the new regulations. It's a good thing. Yes.
very good.
Okay, next item, another SL1. This is amendments to the motor vehicles driving instruction, trainee licenses regulations, NI 2010, page 266. I must say, this was quite new to me. I didn't realise. Trainee instructors can actually go on the road and take on clients.
No, I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Yeah. So, members, the main purpose of this statutory rule is to implement changes to the trainee license scheme for part qualified approved driving instructors, ADIs, to 1, insert an additional condition that the trainee license holder must clearly display their trainee license holder at all times while they are instructing, to allow a part qualified driving instructor to apply for a maximum of 2 trainee licenses, which must run consecutively. Each license is valid for 6 months. So suppose they are only allowed to have that for 1 year. So trainee license holders must return an expired trainee license within 14 days of its expiry. Then third issue is to amend the requirements for cars used for the ADI qualifying tests so that a driver with a medically restricted driving license may take the tests in an automatic car if they wish. The regulations specify that where a trainee license holder has passed the ADI practical driving test in an automatic car, they may only give instructions in an automatic car. The rule will be subject to the negative resolution and is intended to come into operation at the earliest opportunity. Members, are you content for the department to proceed with making the rule?
Whatever.
Content?
Yeah.
Okay. So next item, another SL1 at page 271, amendments to the motor vehicles driving instructor regulations in I-2010. The main purpose of the rule is to implement changes to the trainee license scheme for part qualified approved driving instructor ADIs to amend the requirements for cars used for the ADI qualifying test so that a driver with a medically restricted driving license may take the test in an automatic car if they wish. The regulations specify that where a trainee license holder has passed the ADI practical driving test in an automatic car, they may only give instruction in an automatic car. Also introduce a condition of registration that ADIs must sign a declaration that they would be able to safely take control of the vehicle in an emergency situation. Also to extend the mandatory registration requirement for driving instructors to include trailer trainers, that's B&E trainers. And also, next one is to specify the list of documents which must be regarded as guidance issued by the registrar and which must be adhered to by ADIs and AMIs as a condition of their continued registration, and reduce the fee for the ADI theory test. Very good. Very seldom you hear about reduction in fees. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's welcomed by the ADIs. The rule will be subject to the negative resolution and is intended to come into operation on the 31st January 2015. Members, are you content for the department to proceed with making the rule? Yes. Thank you. Next item 12, page 277. SL1 at the local government disqualification prescribed officers and employments regulation N14. The main purpose of the statutory rule is to specify the prescribed officers and employment which would disqualify the holder from being elected or being a councillor. We were briefed by officials on this last week at our last meeting, and we were content for the department to prepare the SL1. So the rule will be subject to the negative resolution and is intended to come into operation on the 1st December, right, next month, 1st December 2014. So, members, are you content for the department to proceed with making the rule? I know we had a bit of, debate on it last week. But I think members, in the end, were content.
Yep, for me.
With it. That seems to be the most straightforward, simplest way of doing it. Kind of just on salary scale at 27 something per annum. So members content? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. Next item 13, at page 281, and a statutory rule. Members then, that's the producer responsibility obligations. The main purpose of the rule is to transpose an EU directive on the use of recycled glass in glass products, such as glass bottles and jars. The directive set a recycling target of 60% for glass based on the percentage of the amount placed on the UK market on an annual basis. The committee considered the relevant SL1 at our meeting on the 23rd of October, when members were content with the department to proceed with making the rule. The rule is subject to negative resolution and is intended to come into operation in November 2014. The question is, the Committee for the Environment has considered SR 2014/276, the producer responsibility obligations, packaging waste amendment regulations NI, and subject to the report of the examiner of statutory rules, has no objection to the rule. Are members agreed? Agreed. Okay. Maybe we just come back to the earlier issue and to see if Peter has any comment.
I
Number
think
7.
Broadly speaking, it looks right. I can possibly, I think, I see obviously there was one, I wouldn't say objection, but one area where I think one respondent wanted slightly better guidance. I can kind of understand what they're getting at, although I think the department's right, at least in saying, you know, the spirit should be relatively clear as to what's intended. You know, whether there's an argument, maybe slightly greater clarity, you know, maybe in practice might be needed, but I think if people are operating it properly, they should be able to sort of work out that it's maybe a little bit, the bit on step 4 is a little bit vaguely put, but I suppose how you drill that down into very, very specific advice may be difficult, to be honest, on that.
Yeah, but this is not new anyway, is it?
No,
Peter?
it's not. I mean, it's
done
something
this way.
It's what, sorry?
It's always been done this way in councils. No.
No, not
is it?
necessarily.
Okay.
As I understand it, I think the only probably direct legal requirement is that you know, councillors have to put on at least one committee. You know, in terms of main committees of that nature, there's no compulsion, if you like, to do it a particular way. In practice, probably in most councils, it has worked out something of this nature on it, but this is maybe making it a bit more sort of mandatory.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Members, then, are you content then with it then? Okay. So, are you content for the department to issue the guidance formally to councils? This item 7. Agreed? Okay, thank you. Moving on nicely. The next item, members, item 14 is for us now to look in details of our inquiry into wind energy. That's at page 287. Member Sheila has done a very good paper on a summary of the evidence in your meeting pack at page 287. We have agreed that we would conclude our evidence gathering set after we agree, after we've all the evidence, so we would need to start looking at drafting the main issues and make recommendations. So, members, also there is a Clark's paper on the main issues, slightly shorter, tabled, and also tabled is a research paper from the Fermanagh Trust, which is also very good, and it's not really that long. Members, would you need a couple of minutes just to go over Sheila's paper on the main issues, if you haven't read the main pack? Also, oh, right. Okay, sorry. That's one more item tabled. Is that right? Tabled. And there's a list of questions from Carol. Yeah. In relation to the inquiry.
Last week, Chair, was saying we had a number of questions that were sent us to ask the officials. I didn't want to prolong the meeting by asking them, so I'd asked the officials, they sent them in writing, would they send us back. So there's a number of questions there, about 10 questions.
Yeah.
Just really about wind farm setback distances.
Yeah.
And the officials agreed that they would send back in writing some of the responses to us.
Okay. Okay.
Sure, there's one other issue. I know that I had been dealing with a group. There's a proposal just outside my own town, on top of what's known as Katy Mountain, for 6 wind turbines, and there's a community group out there now who's got involved in opposition to it, and they have put a file together were to send it through today, just as part of the final process, if there's, it's basically some of the same things in terms of setback distances. I would
Yeah.
appreciate if you could consider that. We're going to send it on, email it on to you today, Chair, if we can, just as part of the process.
Yeah, yeah.
They had asked to meet the committee, but we didn't want to get into
No.
meeting each group, so we just said whatever points they wanted to make. But it's like this, they're going to be living with it. There's a proposal there for 6 wind turbines over the next couple of months, so it's just they have some concerns about it.
Sure.
Would appreciate if they write in or email in, would take into consideration some of the remarks that they're making in relation to it.
Yeah, they've sent us submissions, Sheila.
Have they sent us a submission, Cathal?
They've sent some things, but there's just
I think there's a formal submission for that from them in our...
well, I'll tell you what it is, Chair, because most of the people have been following this
Yeah.
inquiry. Some of the things, some of the things that has been said in relation to, we had a presentation a couple of weeks ago. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, there's some.
Cal, we have looked at separation distance really
No, Chair,
in
but
details
I'm not
already.
asking that. What I'm saying, to
Yeah.
you, Chair, is this: as part of this whole process, we've invited people in here. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to keep most of the people. There's loads of people we could have come in here and asked to give presentations, and we've kept them out of it. They got together as a group. There was some responses by Galactic and others last week, and all I'm saying is those people were sitting listening to those responses, and they are challenging them. What they've asked is that they write in some of their things to be taken into consideration. That's all they're going to do is email some of those in response to it, and they've every right to respond to it. Because they didn't get a chance to come here and present to the committee. All I'm asking is they're going to email some of the things that they feel that was what was said by NIREG and Galactic.
Yeah. The thing is, we have to be fair to others. We have people who pass the deadline for submission, and we have refused, inclusion of the submission into our report. I think we have to be fair to the previous people who have said they wanted,
To be fair to
respond.
this inquiry, I don't know if there's any deadlines, because this has been a live inquiry going for a long period of time. And I mean, if that were the case, then we extended our inquiry and give other people an opportunity to come in here. I perfectly don't see another 2 or 3 pages in an email with some responses to the live issues brought up here a fortnight ago. I don't think of a big issue in allowing some of that to be brought forward. It may be nothing different to what's there already, but I would certainly be arguing for it, because at the end of the day we'll do a report, but these people may have to live with this for the rest of their days. So, I mean, I'm only putting it to the committee. It's only an email with a few pointers in relation to a response to what members have brought up here in presentations. But I mean, if the committee feels they're content that the inquiry is finished.
Yeah. Well, just this inquiry has been extended, and I think we need to draw a line somewhere to say, right,
And as part of the
this is all
drafting
the information we
yes, Chair,
have
and as
received
part
so
of
far.
but we're live drafting our final report.
Well, up to members. What do you think?
What has been the sort of practice up until now? Because I mean, I appreciate some sympathy for people putting in whatever they want, but I suppose whatever it is, we've got to be consistent with what we've done in the past in terms of how we treat evidence is, right? And is it a question of that you record it, but essentially that it's recorded in a separate category as late evidence, or evidence arrived after the deadline, or is it excluded or is it included? What is? I'm just looking sort of mind.
Majority of people met our deadline, calling for evidence, and they submitted their written paper. There was only one.
Actually, there's been nobody refused except for one person, and they sent a submission after the committee had agreed at the last meeting that they wouldn't take any further evidence.
The cut-off date is
So it was on that basis that it was. One gentleman actually said he wasn't making a submission as such; it was just comments, and the comments really reiterated evidence that we already had from other people. But on that basis, I mean, do you want to reopen? The committee had agreed that that was the end of the evidence gathering. If you want to reopen the evidence, we haven't been particularly firm. We have accepted submissions from people, late submissions. I mean, the deadline for giving formal submissions to the committee was last February 2014, and we have accepted quite a considerable number of submissions since then. But it was just there was only one person who came after we had decided a couple of weeks ago that that was the end of the evidence gathering, and that's the only person who has been refused.
Someone, yes, emailed us with comments.
And Chair,
and we wrote
and that-
back and saying, no,
and
we're
that is
not
the point
taking
in this
any.
inquiry, because if we go back to it, then we can't accept anything after February. So then we extended. All I'm saying.
We've
No, no,
decided after the,
yeah,
the
but
last
Peter's
submission
asking
and the
about the
last briefing.
Yeah, but
So
Peter's
we're not
asking about the procedure.
take
I
any
mean,
more.
if we want to go back to the procedure, then the procedure ended in February. But all I'm saying is, there was a presentation here a fortnight ago. Now, the second presentation was given by a certain group. It doesn't matter which group it is. But nobody then had a chance to respond to some of the stuff that had been said. And all I'm saying is, those people have heard things now at that presentation. They didn't get a chance to challenge that. So we opened up the
Con.
inquiry for everybody to get
Yeah,
a chance.
okay, Con.
Chair, is there likely to be a flood if we open up again? Is there likely to be
No.
a flood of people submitting? No, there's probably not. So maybe just accept the submission, and maybe if there was any others in the last couple of weeks who wanted to, who we refused.
So, yeah,
I don't think there's much harm in it, Chair, but we will need to draw a line at some point.
Yeah, one person after that submission who wrote to us, and we said, no, we're not receiving, we're not accepting any more.
If we did open up, we would have to allow that person to
Yeah.
submit as well.
If we're going to accept this one, we have to go back to the other person and say, we'll take your comments.
President?
Yes. And Carol, to be honest, we really have flawed, I think, the separation distance to death, almost.
Chair,
really.
but it's not. It's just, I can't listen.
Look into.
Chair, to be fair,
If you look at Sheila's paper, we've,
Chair, to be
we've
fair,
compared with
yeah,
other
but Chair.
jurisdictions. We have looked at.
Chair, but to be fair, I don't know what's coming in the
Yes.
email. So there's no. I'm only using that as one example. There could be 3 or 4 other points. So there's no point in you trying to. I don't know what exactly is on the email. The person asked her to give the evidence in response to what was said. So we could get into a debate about setback distances all day. But I mean, if the committee wishes that we don't accept any more, that's grand. That's the majority of the committee. That's fine. I'll live with it.
Chair, I mean, I just,
Sorry, the group had Sheila, if you can.
I think that this group has
Sorry,
been saying,
can you listen to Sheila, please?
I think this particular group gave us a submission, and then they wanted to change their submission, and they said they wanted to give us this amended submission quite a while ago. I think it was either June or during the summertime. But, you know, to date, we haven't actually received it at all. Is it actually available now? Is the information actually available now?
This information is available. Yeah, sure. That's why I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing up today that I got an email last night to say, would you accept
Counteracting if this
information in relation to the last presentation?
was the issue, is it the same, or is it
No, it's different.
Is it information that relates to what was said
Based
in
on
June
what was
was
said.
potentially...
No, it's information in light of the last presentation by Gael Electric,
Sure,
which is a fortnight.
But the best one in the world, I think that's where that might be a bit of a problem, because to some extent, if you get a group, now, however, I'm sure like it's all this stuff is very genuine in that regard, they make a submission, does that mean then that whenever they submit, which was part of the evidence, and there's presumably elements of that might be disputed by Gael Electric, do they then have a right to
come back.
come back on that, and that's where
And it
that's where I
just
can see a
goes on
problem.
and
Well, Peter, to be fair, they don't, because they get an opportunity to come and present to the committee.
Yeah, but with respect on it, if they're saying, if in any group are saying, and it applies on either side on it, well, we've actually heard the evidence of so-and-so who's produced this, we actually dispute this, and we believe that the following A, B and C are actually correct. Well then,
Then
A,
the
B, and,
other
A, B and
would-
C being asserted by another group may not be something which was even put to or given the opportunity for the group representing in front of us. Now, do they then get a right, and it becomes...
Of response
I mean,
to it.
It's
Yeah.
not a case.
The possible bit, I mean, the comedy at just in one level on
To be
it
fair.
is I don't know you can actually breach the situation where you keep on doing
never
it.
end.
Unless there's some sort of general line in the report which said, and other groups, some groups then submitted additional evidence after the deadline or something like that. Or, if there was some acknowledgement of the thing that happened, but without actually knowing it.
Yeah. I just think we have to draw a line somewhere. If not, we're just going to delay this, and it
people are
goes on and on.
Free to
Oh,
lobby
sorry,
anyway.
Chair, as long as you read out a letter of apology, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be recorded you fought the battle.
Sure, have
Right, Chair.
Despite the best protestations of
Yeah,
Catholic
yeah.
Tell them I fought the battle
Yeah.
too, will you?
I will want to thank them for their interest, but, you know, we have now concluded all our evidence, and we want to start writing our report. And,
Right,
you know, they're
right,
very
right.
welcome to look at the
Dominic
report.
Bradley's
Chair,
been
could I
ringing me about
record
this
my
all week.
Record your
disappointment?
disappointment, could you?
Yes, yes,
I'll
Shirley.
record my
Yeah.
disappointment.
Dominic Bradley's my
Okay.
head done
Okay.
this too, you know.
Right. Members, have you time to have a quick read at Sheila's paper? Just maybe the short one, the tabled paper? And if I can just then start going through it, because we have to give Sheila some direction on, you know, what way we want to put into the report. Okay, if we can start then, just the table paper, members, all right? Just the short one, just the one with 5 pages.
What page number, Chair?
It's 8.
Page 8, page 8.
Beginning up to 12.
Have you time to have a look? I give you a couple of minutes to read. Okay, is that okay, Pam?
Yes?
Okay.
Putting you on the spot. What does it say here, Ian? Say in this paper.
That's what the advice.
Okay. Oh, well, good.
So if you want to, you can stick them behind you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Find it. I think it should be part of the process. But if the plan approval is given, it wouldn't be saying, I want the strategic, you'd want the strategic principle.
Okay, members, ready for this? You okay there?
Yep.
Okay. We, then I think we just go straight on to paragraph 3 to just look at the various questions that Sheila put to us. So this is on PPS 18. First one, and we talked about strategic approach and all the other planning issues there. So first one Sheila wants us to decide is if a strategic approach that advocated zoning or the identification of most appropriate locations for wind turbines would be effective. Sandy, the various responses from us is almost saying it's a bit too late now to do zoning. And also then perhaps the local government, the local development plan can't decide, in their own council areas, taking into account the regional development strategy, SPPS, and the renewable energy framework, taking into all those and decide for their own area. So what do you think, members?
Chair, I think zoning to my mind would have been very good, but may be of no good by this stage. I don't know
Yeah.
what it means.
Yeah,
It should still be done,
yeah,
or whether it's simply too late.
yes. I think that's the feelings I got from the planners and the institute, I think, saying.
George, to take the point as well, which maybe marries in a little bit the bits, appreciate what's said there, maybe the point in terms of development of actions through the local councils, through area development, that's I suppose a form of the next best thing to zoning, I'd have thought.
Yes.
I'm just conscious of the fact, to some extent, in the broader level on it, that may well have been something at the start that would have been useful. If we try and at this stage do something that's very top down, without really a great deal of local knowledge, whereas if in terms of local development plans, the council's a role in, as I said, it's not exactly zoning, but establishing what should be in certain areas in that regard, and using their own local knowledge, whether that might be a slightly better route in relation to that.
Yeah. Colin?
Chair, I take kind of the points, but the question really is, should we have a strategic approach? And I still think we should. Whoever is the body that decides what that strategic approach should be, whether it's at a very local level or a more kind of central level, it would have been far better if we'd have done this at the beginning.
Yes.
But we haven't. But I still don't think that should mean that we let things just go the way they're going.
No.
So I think there should be some level of strategic approach. However we decide that, like I'm not being prescriptive on it, but it would be ridiculous, I think, for us to say let's not be strategic. Even though we haven't been to now.
I agree with you, but what I mean then is, even within the development of the local development plan, they need to take into account strategically other strategies like the regional development strategy, the renewable energy framework, and all the other SPPS, to be at that strategic level. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. Cathal?
No, I agree with the strategic approach, Chair. There's no doubt about it, and I don't think it's too late in terms of some of the areas. The reality is, the first question we should have been asking here is in terms of, well, should we agree renewable energy and all of that? The first question should have been asked about need, to be honest with you. So we've set a target, we may not be able to make it, or whatever the case may be, where there's a need. So I think I'm happy enough in terms of what the departmental officials said last week about local area plans, because they will have a big say. But I don't think it's too late. I think that some of the areas in terms of have been saturated with it, to be honest with you. Take it over in Tyrone.
But in terms of zoning, I think they're saying...
I think they need to be zoned. But people need to reflect on this here. Way back at the start of this process, there was actually areas identified as part of this process. But there's one question, Chair, I want to ask just on a
Sorry, just got a reminder. Members, can you move away your tablets? Some people's microphones are not... are being blocked and not...
So many words of wisdom could be lost to posterity.
Chair, in terms of you mentioned the regional development strategy, which is the overarching strategy in all of this here. Did we look at what was in it in relation to renewables, or is it in all? Because I remember part of the process in looking at there's 132 landscape areas. I know that as part of the whole process, they did identify areas that they thought would be more appropriate and more viable for wind farms, to be honest with you. But I'm just wondering here, in light of Colin mentioned, and you mentioned it, which is correct, the regional development strategy should outline major, strategic infrastructural development. But in terms of the strategic approach, I would agree with, and in terms of zoning, I certainly can see local authority in the future will have a big part to play in where they go, to be honest.
Okay. So members in agreement then, we are saying maybe not kind of zoning, but there needs to be a strategic approach to this. But the best way to deal with this would be with local authorities when they're developing their own local area plan.
Yeah, but I think in conjunction
With the RDS.
Sorry.
I think in conjunction with the relevant departments as well.
Yeah, with the regional
Yeah.
development
Yes.
study, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, members.
Chairman, just
continue.
a comment in relation to strategic approach. Yes, I think that's fine. Advocating zoning, I think that takes in a different direction. That basically is part of where the problem is now arising, because it leads on to a saturation, as we know, up, for instance, in West Tyrone. So I think we need to be careful on this one.
No, we're not saying we will
No,
advocate
it's strategic
zoning.
approach and
We're just saying we're just going to leave it for local.
So you're putting a full step after strategic approach.
We're not going to write it like it is, but
Oh, no,
this
no, no,
is-
I understand
yeah,
that, but
we'll
I'm
just
just
say
thinking
we
it's
advocate,
Putting a metaphorical full
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
but we're going to say, you know, we don't think zoning is
way
going to
forward.
be effective. So,
We-
but it's
We don't
best
think
to,
zoning is the way forward.
it's not the way forward, yeah, yes.
But
I
it's
think the
done it-
planners
but
have
it's
come
done
to
it.
say to us, it's too late now. We should have done it a long time ago,
at the moment.
yeah.
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 So, okay, fair
Yeah,
enough.
yeah.
Okay. Next one is, would this result in the saturation of some areas? We've already answered that. Should there be different processes for individual turbines and wind farms to promote more cohesive planning? Again, I think
Right.
we should say the councils and the planning, the strategic team, what do you call that? The one still within the
Strategic
department.
planning.
The strategic planning team should work in close, I think, liaison rather than, because the councils are going to deal with individual turbines. Then you have then within the department, that strategic planning team, they are looking at separately at wind farms. So maybe there needs to be more coordination between.
I think actually I
between them.
worded that
Different
rather
process.
badly. What I was actually getting at was that some of the submissions said that there was a kind of allegation that the right hand didn't know what the left
Yes.
hand was doing, that the councils
Yes, every
didn't know
government.
what was happening in strategic
never happen,
planning,
I don't think.
and there wasn't this level of cohesion going
Yes.
on.
So.
Oh, I understand where you're coming from.
Particularly-
Could be different process. No,
Yeah.
no, you're grand. You're right.
Particularly now with councils, you know, from next year, they are going to be solely responsible for planning in their own area. So maybe there needs to be more talking with each other. Yeah.
Called
yeah.
joined up thinking.
More joined up thinking. Quite right.
Yeah.
Right face. Right face. Yeah. Okay. Next then, members, should there be closer definition of what constitutes economic considerations as stipulated in both PPS 18 and the draft SPPS? Maybe not closer, but maybe clearer definition. Would that?
It should be. I'd have been a bit tired with it.
Yeah. Would
But I
members?
would go stronger in terms of economic considerations. I mean, does that follow on from contribution to communities, or is that? I mean, we're talking about the benefits of wind turbines in general, or we're talking about the whole community aspect.
No, you see a lot of in their planning statement from developers, they would say they would create 100 jobs. But there's no way, from the responses we received, people are saying there's no way that planners will go back in a year's time
Say, where's the
to
100
say,
jobs?
yeah, how many jobs they have created and how many jobs have been sustained. So, and they'll say, they'll benefit this amount of money and that amount of money. So maybe just maybe a more definite requirement for them to come up with less vague, more specific economic benefits, economic that their contributions to the community are.
That takes you into different territory here, because if you have, for instance, saying this mythical 100 jobs, and you ask over what period of time? Well, over the next 25 years, we reckon that. Now, who is going to be there? That started at the 20 years. ago, and they're still standing at 25 years after and saying, no, there wasn't 100 jobs, so close this whole thing down. No.
No, but maybe more specific, give more detail, say at construction.
Yes.
You would create a project manager, whatever,
But Chair,
you
there's
know,
a slight,
construction workers, and then once it's up and running, how many staff you would require to do what. Just more specific details.
but Chair, there's a slight problem with that. See, that doesn't really fit into plan per se, because it's a material consideration. So whoever puts in their business case as part of their application. So I mean, I don't know how we would define that, to be honest with you. I mean, in terms of, as you know, most plan applications, economic weighting, it's either given or not, and it's a material consideration
It is.
in any planned application. So I'm just wondering how you would clearly define that in terms of the planning application process itself, which might be a slightly difficult one. That's why I asked you, was it community or...
Yes.
Clearly this is the jobs and the economic element of it. And, you know, it counts for any planned application in terms of
Oh, it
economic
does.
weighting. So
It does. It does. I
know
think
how you
it's
would-
the responses from the community groups that it's, you know, it's a big material consideration in planning about job creations, about the economic benefits. And what they are saying is there is no means by planners afterwards to verify, or the developer to have to come up to verify what they claim the economic benefits may be.
Chair, I mean, the other thing is, I mean, economic benefits can be slightly more tangible than that as well, because, you know, like sort of taking a particular view, if you take a view that, for instance, that here's an opportunity, more electricity will be generated, you know, if you take that, which could in theory lead then to cheaper electricity, if there's much more of a surplus of it, you know, does that have a certain level of wider economic benefits for the wider community as a whole, for example?
Exactly, but that maybe should be included in it, to say
Yeah, I mean, I think
the
the
price will
problem-
drop by whatever.
I think the problem is, to some extent, is I think it's very difficult to tie down in terms of specifics and then the implications. I think Cal's right in that regard on it, but it's true of a lot of. I mean, you know, for example, and I think realistically as well, if you get a situation in which wind turbine is put up, and say there was on the basis of a promise of the sort of this, you know, these series of turbines will create 100 jobs, and it creates 40, for instance, on that basis, well, realistically, if you're judging that a year down the line, are you then going to demolish the wind turbine because it's up? You know, I mean, I think, yeah. I think it's a difficult bit. I mean, there may be a more general point about you know, sort of the information in terms of economic considerations being made sort of clearer and more specific, if possible. I'm not sure there's a great deal further you can go in that, to be honest. But.
Yeah, well, that's what we recommend. You know, really, you know, more specific on the economic aspects, because it's such a high weighting in the decision-making process on economic benefits, and yet people can just claim they have such and such, you know, big benefit, and yet may not come up with it. Okay, members, we agree with that then? Okay, clearer definition?
Yeah.
Okay, next one, should there be an audit of the effectiveness of PPS 18 to determine the economic output of wind turbines?
That's a simple one. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, it's up to the department to find a way of doing it, but yes, we advocate for that. Yeah.
Utterly trust them.
Yeah. Okay, next, planning processes. Inadequacies of current planning procedures. We want to look if there is adequate consideration of the cumulative impact of turbines, given that planning officials have confirmed that they use their professional judgment to decide when saturation point has been reached. I think cumulative effect has been a big issue from community responses. I think, you know, I think we would support, we would call for...
support that, Chair. That needs clearly defined that there are
I think that's
exactly
true. I think at times, I was going to say, can also be, leaving aside even the wind turbines, it can be a wider issue within planning, that at times there's always this balance between what the saturation effect is and treating an individual application on its merits, and I think at times it maybe it veers a little bit more towards the individual than looking at the cumulative effect.
Yes.
But that's as I said, that's a wider issue than purely the.
Yeah, yeah. Well, would that put that in then? Okay. Next one, should conditions relating to noise complaint investigation be routinely attached to planning consents? I think so too.
Yeah.
This is the case in the rest of the UK as well. Okay, next one is, should planning applications for connection to the grid be assessed at the same time as a turbine
Yes.
application?
Yeah.
You know, I think logically you would say yes, but then I think the explanation from NIE is that
But Chair,
they have to have planning permission first before they could consider whether they can connect it to the grid.
Chair, it's not
Okay,
us.
and
But it's not our job to defend any. That we're making a recommendation. I believe this is a good recommendation. Whether they adhere to it or not is another thing.
Apparently
But I
it's
think it's,
routinely done.
I think as part of our
Wales.
report, I think I would recommend this.
yeah. Okay. Well, up to members.
Routinely,
Yes, if you were having a planning application for a wind turbine, you would have to have some idea of the connection to the grid and the feasibility and the costs of it at the time.
Yeah.
Do you put your
Think it's
own
common
application?
sense.
Now, what I think NIE said to us, if I recall, is that they have on their website information on, or we suggested they should have information for people to know what areas that they can get to the grid easier and what areas they can't.
Yeah, it's a question to some extent, Chair, and I appreciate what you said in terms of the constraint at one level, but is it actually almost then going a little bit further and saying actually the system should change to try and tie in the planning permission with the, you know, whatever route round it is, rather than simply get the planning permission and hope that you get that, because, you know, with the best will in the world, if you're left effectively with, you know, if it's not serving a useful purpose, a potential eyesore there, which isn't then able to be connected in, it kind of makes it
It's
seem
usually
fairly
the
pointless.
cost is not the eyesore, it's usually cost. When people get then the planning permission, then they realise connecting to the grid
Yeah.
would cost them
Sure, but-
something like 50,000 of 500,000. There's no point
Yeah.
of
Chair,
them
but I
then
think
to
we need to
connect
come away.
it to the grid.
I think, to be fair, Chair, we need to come away from that there. I think NIE cannot stand out in isolation. You know, if we're talking about departments and everybody else working together, there's no way that a person going to get plan permission and then find out that it takes £250,000 to
Yeah.
connect to the grid.
Yeah.
There should be made a statutory body to deal with or be part of the planning process, and that's
Okay.
what I think should be coming out of this report.
Sure.
It was causing problems for planning officers because they were granting planning applications but had no idea how many of them were actually going to be built. So
Yeah.
it made it difficult for them to assess cumulative impacts or anything else. They didn't know how many were in the pipeline.
But Chair, any would-be developer on this here is going to have a clear indication. This is, you know, you're not talking about small amounts of money here. You're talking in hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds. So from the day they sign the name or put in the application, they know what this is all about. So I do not accept, and I take the point up, I take the argument up to a certain point that NIE should be a bit more upfront. But I also say this, the applicant needs to, and I think they do fully understand, you know, we're talking about £250,000 here, give or take 50 or 60,000 pounds either side of it. So I mean that's the sort of stuff that they're going into here.
Yeah, yeah. I think wind farms usually would have done their research. It's the single turbines.
yes.
People just think, oh, I'm going to get a grant and doing that, I'm going to do this, apply for planning permission, and then when they go in and do NIE, NIE say, well, the substation is miles away, it's going to cost you 500,000 to connect it to the grid. Then people just say, oh, right. Then, yes, then you have so many planning applications to the planning office deal, really just a waste of time. So, Sheila, you're saying
I don't
the
mind.
rest of the UK, they do it at the same time?
Well, apparently DETI are doing a very similar inquiry into renewable energy and connection to the grid, and that's what I was told had come out of their inquiry, that because there is a monopoly in Northern Ireland of infrastructure provision by NIE, that is how it's done here, but that in other jurisdictions there is not the same monopoly of connection provision to grid infrastructure, and that other companies do provide these cost estimates at the time of planning applications.
I suppose it's only fair to the applicants. Yeah, spending all that time and money to know the likelihood of all the costs involved. Well, I am happy to say yes to it. Members, what do you think?
Yeah.
Do you assess at the same time as the turbine application?
Yeah, we're happy.
Yeah, okay. Then, next one is adequate information provided on generic planning application forms, or should there be a separate application specifically for wind turbines? I would support this. I mean, obviously, a generic application form is very, very simple, say for building an extension to a kitchen, but it's still the same form, I believe, for wind turbine. So
That's what we've been told by submissions.
We've been told, yeah, by submissions. So, I mean, an extension to a kitchen to, 20 turbines on a site of 20 acres is a big difference. So,
Good point, Chair, but I'm just wondering what difference would it make?
To be much greater.
it will be a separate form.
What difference would that make?
Be a separate form. There would be the general household application forms, and then
But apparently
more
they don't
detailed
actually give very much detail on the application forms, so that any neighbours or anybody looking at the application form doesn't have very much detail on what's actually being proposed.
But it would state that it was a wind turbine.
Right, this year.
I'm not sure what it states.
It would,
They may not
I
state
think
the
it
height
would.
or the exact
Yes.
location of it.
Yeah,
yes,
I mean, and we're not saying a major development either, are we?
yeah.
So therefore, if it doesn't say wind turbine on it, then I think there should be a category for it. And it doesn't have to be a complicated one. It
Yes.
may end up that it is, I don't know, but I think there has to be a separate category for this type of development.
Yeah, I think so.
If it's been treated the same as an extension to your kitchen
Yes.
or something of a minor nature, then I think that needs to be different.
Yeah, yeah. It'll really alert people to that information. We'll put it in.
I
You
don't
can
know.
put it in.
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll put that in.
Could be in
Then we can
serious
have a
bail
word.
policies that you have to take.
Planning.
Yeah,
With the
check
planners.
that's accurate.
Yes.
That's what was
Whether we're correct to say that it is the same form, but from the submissions given to us, people are saying it's the same form for a domestic application for a kitchen extension and to the application for a wind farm. So it does not make sense to me. Okay, next one is there adequate neighbourhood notification, or should this be made mandatory within a much greater radius than the current 90 metres? And I think it does make sense to ask for a greater radius, particularly in rural areas. Because in urban areas it's very different, but rural areas, if it's still 90 metres, you could only cover maybe 1 or 2 houses.
And Chair, then if we agree that it's a different type of colour of application form, different processing of an application form, then I think it has to be different here too.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Chair, just on that, I know that neighbour notification is going to be in statute, and then I don't know when it's starting in the new act, but as part of the new planning act, it will be in statute.
Okay.
Neighbour notification. Have
Okay.
you any suggestions in terms of
Bigger
the...
than 90 metres? The current
No,
level is set
say,
at 90 metres?
yeah, but we need to change that distance, obviously, as well. 90 metres, not...
We just asked them for a review of it, rather than for us to set
Well,
it.
at the minute, they're saying on single wind turbines is 10 times the rotor diameter, so that could be 300 metres. Like.
No, that's for setting up, but this is notification, informing people there is
Sorry, yes, Chair.
there's a planning application in.
But there's, sound, but I think we need there's 2 separate things here. Neighbour notification will be in statute under the new planning laws, new regulations, right? That's one thing. It's coming in. But the other thing is in terms of the
But neighbour notification has always been there, on the statute book.
No, it hasn't been statute. It's discretionary. No.
All right, okay.
No, it hasn't been, Chair.
Okay.
But I would also, so you, in terms of 90 metres, you're just asking for a review of that distance, yeah?
Sorry, you're right, mandatory within a much greater
Some of the
radius.
community groups have been asking for a radius of 5 kilometres, some type of mail shot or something, just to.
Well, I think,
That's, I'm only passing on what's
okay.
I
Okay.
think
if they're talking about distances for the wind
Notification.
turbine, you know, some 500 metres, whatever, wouldn't any harm to have 500 metres?
Yeah. You see, Chair, that,
I think probably the format of saying that there needs to be maybe this is what is there may be inadequate and needs reviewed. And that
Reviewed it
I'd be a little bit
rather than
cautious
for
about
us to
drafting
send
off
it.
the-
Yes,
setting a
because we don't
particular-
know.
no, no, sorry, I'm only
Yeah.
asking a question about the
Yeah, just to review the distance and, you know, needs to be mandatory. Okay, next one, should the focus of environmental impact assessment include the psychological and physical health of residents who may be impacted?
What sort of, what are we saying here? What
Just
sort of a
difficult.
report would that likely to come from psychologists and from consultants and everybody lining up to give their report on? I mean,
You get what you pay for.
is it a wee bit OTT there?
Is that a health impact assessment required of them to do?
Some of the
I think some of
residents'
them do.
groups would say that there is evidence to say that people who are living nearby are affected, for instance, by low-frequency sound, and that should be included in an environmental impact assessment.
It wouldn't do any harm.
Again, should we
Yeah.
just say review, ask them to review
Ridiculous. I don't know.
whether, you know, that they should extend that environmental impact assessment also to include health and well-being
I
of
mean,
residents?
I'm trying to echo as far as I
Yeah,
can.
yeah, I
Things
know,
that have come
I know,
up in
I
the submissions
know.
and the concerns, the main
But-
areas.
yeah, it is, yeah, but then, Chair, the only way you could do any of that is under the EIA, which is the impact assessment, is outline certain things like the low frequency and all of that there, but I think that's part of the process anyway. I mean, I was saying would stipulate certain things under the EIA.
Yeah, it's in every,
Do you know what I mean? I don't know.
in the first case, you go to the doctors and say,
I mean, you could only test noise pollution and all of that and how that impacts on people's health or something like that. I don't know how you would.
Yeah, I think it is
don't
just
know
going to be
either.
very difficult to say. I mean, at the moment, how they judge, I think, distance and impact on the noise level, and how the noise level may then impact on people's health.
No, you know, I can't.
But it is very difficult to impact individual application on, you know, on impact on the health of local residents, taking into account people who have different health issues as well.
What are some of the reports that people are saying that affects their health?
You're not going to have a
Give us some examples like of what they're saying, of how it affects their health.
Well, people have said sleep disturbance and
It's basically the impact of noise, of all
Yeah.
descriptions, either low frequency noise or noise they can actually hear, disturbance of their sleep. There is some evidence, I think, that now we've got 2 points of view. That there is no evidence, and there is some evidence that low frequency noise can actually impact on people's health by causing maybe brain tumours or something, fairly serious impacts, but I'm not sure that that is actually.
Well, then,
we
sure.
have got a
evidence.
research paper to
Well,
say
then-
there is no medical evidence
Well,
to
Chair,
say
could-
wind turbine would cause health problems.
Well, could I make this suggestion? We'll look at it in terms of the EAA assessment and try to expand that out. Obviously, noise is one issue. I know that we're going to look at the ATSU ATSU R97
Yeah,
later. But if it's noise that's saying most of it, I mean, maybe it's something in terms of the EIA process or report. We could look more in depth in how they'd go about that.
I mean, people have disputed the impact as well on the psychological health of what was, maybe retiring to the countryside and having a beautiful view in a quiet area, and now to get up every morning and see 25 wind turbines in front of them, that is an adverse psychological effect. you know, they thought they were buying into something else and went to live there. You know, can you do that?
Yes. And also, it's also been mentioned about because of the lack of communication with the local residents, people feel a loss of power, loss of control on the planning process.
That's right.
That then can also cause frustration and cause health problems. But these are just, I think, too difficult to assess. I feel that if we stick with noise level, maybe that's more tangible than to say people need to take into account of psychological and physical health. There isn't much physical health, I think. Physical health on
Well, I think that was the result of sleep disturbance had an impact on physical health.
Right.
Well, sure, in that there, I would be supportive of the EAA focus, right? But you have to reflect also what's been in the reports in terms of sleep deprivation. You have to reflect that on the final report.
Yeah.
You know
But,
what I mean?
yeah, but if we stick with the level of noise, it is mostly the noise that affects people's
Well, that's
psychological
good. And that's what
and
I'm saying on
physical
the
health.
EAA.
So
That's what I'm
rather
saying
than
on-
specifying they
yeah.
must include psychological and physical
Yeah.
health assessment, because it's just practically it may be difficult for planners to do.
It's difficult, Chair, to demonstrate how the physical health's been impacted on, just as much as psychological, in my view.
Well, psychological is difficult too, really. People can
But I
have a
don't think we
precondition.
I don't think we can ignore it,
Yeah.
because we either can't prove or disprove, you know, the psychological or physical effects that this may or may not have. So I don't know, there need to be some kind of balance struck here, but
But Chair, if we then follow through with the strategic approach, the assessment or the effectiveness of, should an audit of the effectiveness of PPS 18 be carried out, which we've said yes to. If all of this is carried out to, then it should have a result in here at the end. So maybe, whilst I still think that we have to include it, I would hope then that it would not be just so cumbersome and so bureaucratic, because I'm not sure. I think that we need to have an environmental impact assessments include the potential psychological and physical health of residents. You know, I would hope that if this is carried through in the way that we have tried to outline it here, then that should minimise it to a great extent. It will not eradicate it, but because nothing ever does.
I just worried in practice, how can
I
planners
agree with you,
do? How can developers make the assessments? So,
No, and that's fair,
You
Chair.
know,
I think you
yes.
reflected it. I think the only way we can realistically do it is an environmental impact assessment. And as part of that, we're looking at most of the people who have said things has been on the noise pollution issue, right?
yeah,
And
yes,
in the next page, we're looking at HCR 97, which is something we may,
yes.
and then the setback distances.
I think
You know,
so.
collectively, there may be enough
I think
in
so.
the report
I
that
think so.
made adjustment.
Yeah, I'll agree. That's my point as
Okay.
well. So, members, are you content? We're just not going to include the physical and
Yeah,
the
yeah, okay.
psychological effects, which are,
Right, Tim?
yes, we would agree, but it's just
It has
going to
to be
be very hard to
As
do.
long as it's reflected
Yeah.
in the report.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Next one, then, members. The second term of reference focuses on noise and separation distances from dwellings. So, A is possible noise guidelines. This has been the most emotive aspect of the inquiry. Yep. So
Okay, we agree with the first one.
I think, majority of responses from residents and local community groups are about noise and distance. So, members, would you want to see the issue 97 guidelines to be reviewed on an urgent basis?
Sure, I think,
Okay.
I think,
Yes,
Chair,
I think there's no
we can,
argument
I
for
think
that.
we'd agree on these in block. I would
there.
suggest these in block.
Okay.
Agree these.
Okay. Should arrangements be put in place for ongoing long-term monitoring of wind turbine noise?
Yes.
Yes, too. I think so. Okay. Next one, should research be instigated to determine the impact of low-frequency noise on residents who live in close proximity to individual turbines and wind farms and on? But who is going to do it?
That's not our problem.
That's not our, Chair, that's not our
Not
problem.
our problem.
That's not our
Okay,
problem. yeah.
okay, fair enough. Fair enough, okay, put it in. Should the make, model and age
Yes.
of the proposed
Yes.
turbine,
Yes.
members say yes, because we've been told there are reconditioned turbines being used, so, yep, good. We're moving on. Setback distance, again, at a big issue here in Northern Ireland.
Moving on.
So we want to look at the minimum separation distance, or if current flexibility should still be available to planners.
To be minimum.
I can't recall who said it in the committee here at the start, but somebody said that we have flogged this one to death. I can't think of who said that.
Someone said
I wonder who said
I
that.
said that.
But Chair, maybe,
I think it should be a minimum.
yes, there should be a minimum, Chair, I agree. 750
Yeah.
starting point. isn't it?
Yeah, and the rest, now, in the rest of the UK,
Oh, yes.
there is no, I think, setback distance
Aye, 750.
mandatory.
They're not mandatory.
There is none, not in any part of the UK or Republic of Ireland.
No.
Yes, it
Yes,
is,
that's-
it is really judged more on
Chair, I think we've
the
flogged that
noise.
one to death.
Yes, it's more on noise
But
level.
you have to
Yeah.
take into account, if you
Yes.
specify a minimum separation distance, this will apply to individual turbines.
Oh, I agree, Chair, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that farmers and so on may not want to have
Yes,
them.
but then
so-
we're going to have joined up thinking on all of this anyway, so that should deal with that too.
Yeah, but according to Mrs. Wash, right, yeah, I take your point a lot more.
Chair, we have
According to Mrs. Wash, our consultant or advisor, she said it's nothing, noise level has nothing to do with separation distances, because you can have someone in the valley, right, on each side of the valley, then the noise level would be a lot higher if you measured it on a linear distance. 500.
but
Yeah, there is clearly no
500.
correlation.
Yeah.
Clearly by definition, if you have something that's noisy, if you're closer to it, still will be noisier the
Yes.
closer you get to it. But there's also other factors
Yes,
as well.
that's
It's
geographical.
not just about the
Chair, but
noise.
Yeah,
I
it's
think the point- I think the
geographical,
point is, Chair,
geographical.
you know, it'll be joint up thinking and we agree on a minimum, all right, distance.
I think
A minimum.
our advisor is saying it's not logical to have setback distances, because it's depending on the area, depending on
Chair,
the,
she's specifically addressing noise,
yes.
not
We're not to
all,
liquor or anything
not
else
the
or
whole.
thing.
Yeah, that's
Issue.
right.
Chair-
She just look at
Should be
noise,
minimum.
yeah.
She's only looking at noise.
But she did look at setback distance in relation, setback distances
Like a
in
shadow flick
relation
of the
to
whole lot.
noise. So, she's saying, rigidly saying there needs to be a separation distance, would make it very difficult. It would not be helpful to residents.
She said that there needs to be a robust measurement of noise as the main criterion.
Yeah,
Because,
that's grand.
What Anna is saying is, you get this situation, we get a wind turbine at the top of one hill and somebody living at the top of the other one. If you go right down through the valley,
Chair-
it may be more than 500, but
Yes.
that person will suffer
Right.
a greater
Chair,
noise
in
impact.
relation to this matter, I would suggest, I agree with the issue of the minimum separation distance. I agree with it, so if that's the recommendation put forward, I'm happy to agree with that. I think there should be a minimum.
Yeah, do you want to come in?
I don't disagree at all, but the reality is this is the committee making recommendations, so we're not deciding what the changes, if any. You know, this whole report could be ignored by the department. Most of it likely will be. So I don't think we should get caught up on or worried about what we include in it or not. I think that there is an argument for this, certainly within the local community, so I don't think why we shouldn't include it. If they accept it, that's up to them, but
Okay.
it's just our recommendation.
Yeah. Well, in general, they do take our recommendations seriously. So, and we can always go back to them and
It's very
ask them
considered.
to follow up,
Very considered.
progress. Okay, well, if that's what members want, we'll put that in.
Okay.
Okay, that they should set a minimum separation distance. At the moment, they do have something like, what, 50, 500 metres anyway. So they'll probably say, we're doing it anyway.
Let's move along,
So,
please.
okay, next one is, if a separation distance is to be specified, how should this be determined, taking into account constraint on the availability of land? I think we just leave that for the department
Yeah,
to
Chair, I don't
set
think we'll be dealing with that now.
yeah,
I think we'll do that.
the minimum separation distance. Okay?
Yep.
Good enough? Yep. Next one, other forms of renewable energy. Members, would you wish to consider if we agree with this view that we're
Yes, Chair.
taking different evidence on maybe other forms of renewable energy? Agree to mix?
Yep.
You can't argue with that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
okay? Yep, members, yep. Next one, the third term of reference is on community engagement. Right, we're moving on. Okay, we're looking at then, should there be pre-application consultation process?
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. Next, wind farm cooperatives, I think that's something government should encourage and support. Okay. Members, there's the tabled report from the Fermanagh Community Trust advocating cooperatives, citing examples in England of how that encourages buy-in from local communities with, less delay, less protests, opposition to it, and benefiting communities, giving people a say. So I think we should certainly put this in, include this in, members.
Yeah.
Okay, next one, statutory consultees. List of consultees should be widened to reflect all users of the countryside. Agree with that?
Very
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Next one, mandatory community engagement toolkit.
Yeah.
Okay, consideration of community views by planners
Yeah.
and developers. And it's not just consideration, it's really meaningful engagement.
Yep.
Okay?
Anna, some of these are mutually exclusive. Those are different points of view.
Sorry, consider community views by planners and developers. Just upload group community concerns regarding. No, but we are saying there needs to be community consideration of community views by planners and developers.
Right. The planners are saying that they do get due consideration. The residents are saying that they do not, and furthermore that they have difficulty in resourcing any objections and so on that they do bring to the planners. This wasn't clearly agreed. These are basically based on a lot of the things that were discussed at the stakeholder events, but some of the points weren't agreed by stakeholders, and this was one of them.
Recruit robust. Well, what we're saying is planners and developers, particularly I think developers, need to listen more to and engage more with community and take into account their views and making changes in relation to the views of residents, really having meaningful engagement with them. And not just, a lot of the responses saying, oh, they just send circulars, they knock on doors, and then they put up an exhibition for 4 hours, on an evening in the local town hall. And what are we
trying to say is this the case? The way I read it at the minute is that the community at present feel it's a tick box exercise.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
But the other side is then that planners and developers are saying that they are robustly going through the process. Which should we hear? I mean,
Chair, Chair, just on that point, it's not the lack of robustness or otherwise of this public consultation that I have an issue with. What I do have an issue with is that it doesn't seem to have any impact, because we're into consultation, and I agree with that process, that should be happening. But what I find very hard to live with is after the consultation is over, and they don't get, and I'm not specifically talking about this here, and they don't get the answer they were looking for, they just go on anyway.
Yes.
So it brings you back. I mean, take for instance an issue of the closure of a hospital, where you have 15 or 20,000 people standing protesting in a market square somewhere about the closure of their hospital, and everybody invariably says, "I don't want it to close," and the
trust to
department
say we're going ahead.
said, "Well, thank you very much. We have heard what you've said, but you know something, we're going ahead anyway."
Yes.
What's the business of this?
Exactly. I think that's the point
And
made
those who
by
say
residents.
it is a box ticking exercise, they have got it dead right.
Yes,
That's all.
yes, yes. That's the main gist of respondents. You know, they're invited to an exhibition of it with pictures and drawings, and what they say, you know, in the opposition to, you know, some issues are never taken into account. They make no changes to the plans. So what we're saying is, you know, the views of residents need to be considered and incorporated if, you know, if it's sensible, if it's, you know, it's practicable to make changes, to listen to the respondents, to residents. Is that okay, members? Yep, yep. Timely and early engagement, we agree?
Yep.
Yeah. Neighbourhood notification,
Yeah.
yep, yep. But do we want to follow the suggestion to 5 kilometres from the site?
I think,
We just maybe just say it needs to be extended.
yeah.
I think we left it that it should be
Yeah.
reviewed.
Should be reviewed.
Reviewed,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Well, review,
Okay.
extend it on. You can do the review first, but with the intention of
Yeah.
extending
Yeah.
it.
Not 5
Okay.
kilometres.
Just review, yeah, you have to extend
Okay.
it.
So documentary evidence that residents had been informed. We're saying this would be impractical and possibly against data protection law. That's the view from developers. But I think, I mean, you don't need to be giving out details. You just need to say, you know, how many residents have been contacted, and, you know, what the views are, rather
Yes.
than.
And what means of
Yeah.
media were used to publish it and
That's
make
it.
it known.
Yes.
Not as we have in the past, where whenever it was pushed and said, where was this, I think it was the National Trust, where do they advertise for comments? I think it's the Belfast Gazette or something like that.
That's right.
Now, I wonder many people actually around this table, for instance, reads the
We do.
Belfast Gazette.
Yes,
on a daily
yes.
basis.
We make them change.
Where's it published?
Yes.
It's published in London, so it is.
Oh, absolutely.
Which makes it very, very useful and handy and very transparent, I think. No, that's an
No,
absolute
I
mockery.
don't think it was National Trust, it was
Listed
NIA,
bed
the
and
built
first
environment, is
Yeah,
that?
perhaps it was.
Yes,
Perhaps it was.
the
I don't wanna
listed
mis-
buildings or something, was it? Yeah. Anyway, so, yep, quite agree with
I
you.
haven't read that. Send me a copy.
We don't accept that it's impractical. It is how they approach it. It's, you know, you don't need to include all details of people's names and addresses. Okay, very useful as a record of consultation. Yep. Information events should be properly organised.
Yeah.
Okay, not just exhibition, 4-hour exhibition on a cold evening. Monetary community benefit schemes, yes, we will support. Level of community benefits to be set at government level. That's the case in the rest in England, isn't it? So I think we would support that.
Yes.
And particularly in Northern Ireland, we are much lower in community benefits given out by developers compared to the rest of the UK, for those ones who actually put up community benefits. So, okay, members, agree with that?
Chair, could I make a following suggestion in relation to the community benefits? Are we saying that that should be part of the condition of approval on planning application? To ensure that, I mean,
I think so. Would it, what? Is it compulsory? You mean compulsory?
yeah, as part of the condition, if it's conditioned in the plan application, I mean, then they have to adhere to it. I'm only throwing it out there, but I'm not grand.
Your turn.
What about the rest?
Community
Is
benefit.
it
I mean, if
compulsory?
the approval's given, well, then as part of the condition of the plan application that the community benefit should be highlighted, whatever that community benefit is, if they say it's a monetary unit or whatever the case.
Yeah. I don't think we can do that. I don't know whether there is a
I
piece
think
of
planning
law.
service can do it as a condition.
No, but I don't know if you need a piece of law to say that. Whether they can
That's a condition.
legally challenge that.
No, I'm only suggesting, I'm making the suggestion, Chair, that planning service put it as a condition as part of the application. Whatever format of words, that's up to them.
I think supermarkets and so on, if they're doing applications for shopping centres and so on, there's very often a stipulation they have to put in a road or...
Yeah, it's a condition in a plan application.
But that's different.
But that's part of
That's
the
very
planning
different.
condition.
No, that's in terms of access,
Agreed.
in terms of
Thank you.
transport.
Agreed, yeah. Agreed, yeah. Agreed as part of the condition application. Agreed.
I don't think we can do that. Can we check whether we have any legal grounds to say they must do this?
But it's only a
Chair,
recommendation,
it's a
Chair.
recommendation from this.
important
It's nothing to
whether
do with...
Agreeable or doable.
But we can recommend something that's illegal.
Yeah.
Well, can't do it, just can't
Yeah.
interact it.
Well, the department will come back and say, tell us
Yeah.
that then, so they will.
I'd leave it with them.
Okay, right, we're a very liberal group here, thank you.
Yes, under your inspired leadership, we're moving in liberal directions.
Okay,
Okay, yeah, right.
community register, community benefits register, I think we should support this.
Yes.
Fermanagh Trust certainly highly recommend
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Community benefits to be allocated proportionately, I think so too. Reduced tariff for those living nearest. Yep, I think that's a sensible idea. Compensation for homes, agree?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, members. Thank you very much. That's very productive. Sheila should be pleased,
Thank you very much. And thank
and Sheila's going
If
to.
there's anything.
Yeah. Right. Well, is there anything else, members, you think we might have missed out?
Sure, I would like to. Somebody contacted me bringing forward information earlier on.
But that doesn't deter me from
Yeah.
policing.
Well, you can tell them we've
No, it's
really
okay, Chair.
gone
Don't
very
even
much.
respond. Don't.
We have accepted a lot of the recommendations
sorry.
from residents and community groups. Okay, members, then a draft report will be prepared within the next few weeks. Sheila? Happy Christmas.
I think it came before Christmas, but...
Chair, can I just say a big thanks to Sheila for
Absolutely.
the rest of the staff for the work that has been done on this, because it has been, it started off a mini, and it's turned out to...
Full blown
Yeah.
inquiry. And
Oh, dear.
Oh dear, oh
Yes.
dear. By full blown, is that?
we're all say
Okay.
here to Vice
Oh,
Chair.
I'm Maxie, and
Yeah,
it's one
yeah,
from many to
endorse
Max.
that. There are thousands of pages Sheila had to go through. She spent a whole week going through all the responses, so very well done, Sheila. Yep. Okay, next, members, departmental briefing on the draft second cycle river basin management plans, and also in view of what we said earlier about the nitrates directive, and they said they're quite happy to answer questions and brief us on the nitrate directive as well, because they are the same team looking at it. So if we can welcome Wendy McKinney, Freshwater and the RMBP Group Manager, Gabrielle Nelson, Head of Water Management. Sorry, I said Wendy because Wendy the first one to walk in, but Gabrielle is the boss, right?
I'm not precious about that, Madam Chair.
Yes, and then Eamon Campbell, Head of Water Policy. Eamon, I think I met you in one of the sessions, the workshop, is that right? On water basin management, some time ago?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Okay, it is of great interest to the community in terms of, this policy, and we've been following it up, and certainly I'm very disappointed with the lack of funding in the first round, and we understand we are far from reaching the good status target of 59%. Isn't that right? We are now at about 29% at the moment of good status.
Yeah,
Water
in around that,
quality, on
Madam Chair,
fresh
yeah.
water quality. So we certainly look forward to your briefing, and I'm sure members will have questions to ask you. And you're also going to talk to us about the nitrates directive?
Yeah, with your agreement, we will maybe cover that at the end of
Sure.
this session on the river basin planning, and
Yeah.
we'll happily take questions that the committee members might have on that as well.
Jolly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I would suggest, if you're happy enough, that I
Sorry,
would...
just let member know, there's a briefing paper at page 516 for members. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, that's the summary overview. Yeah.
Yes.
I would maybe suggest I would just talk through that by way of an introduction to the subject. Yeah. Okay.
Wait for 1 minute. I've lost my screen. Talking too much and not paying attention to my screen. Go ahead anyway.
Okay.
I know roughly.
We were maybe going to just circulate some maps around for the committee members, just to show the river basin districts that we're referring to, just as a point of reference. I know there might be some new folks who might not have been involved in previous briefings. So, okay, just going through quickly through the summary overview. The Water Framework Directive sort of came into being about 2000, and I suppose it does set a framework to take an integrated approach to the protection of the water environment, and covers all water types that you'll see listed in the briefing there, which includes groundwaters, estuaries, coastal waters, rivers, lakes, and indeed wetlands. The requirement under the directive is that we produce river basin management plans. And what we're involved in at the moment is to take forward a consultation on the second cycle plans. And you have an example of that, I think, in the briefing pack that was provided. We're obliged to produce a plan for each river basin district, and the maps that we've circulated show those districts. There are 3 covering Northern Ireland. The northeastern, which sits totally within Northern Ireland, and then the other 2 districts are referred to as international river basin districts, those being the northwestern and the Naban, because they're cross-border in nature, and we share the catchments with the Republic of Ireland. As you may be aware, we published the first set of plans in 2009. And as you record, Madam Chair, at that time we had approximately 28% of water bodies were at good status, and the target was to arrive at 59% by 2015. The plans that we're now proposing to publish for consultation are draft, a 6-month consultation period. And then the process thereafter is that following the consultation period, we would then finalise the plans, and subject to executive approval and the committee's approval, we would publish those plans by December 2015. It's important to record that whilst DOE are the lead in terms of coordinating the production of the plans, the other departments involved in co-delivery are listed there, and they are DARD, BRD and DCAL. So the responsibilities sit across all 4 departments and their agencies. As I've said, there is a requirement to coordinate activities with the Republic of Ireland, and indeed we work closely with colleagues in the other devolved parts of the UK, including England, Wales and Scotland. And indeed the Republic of Ireland authorities are not out to consultation on their plans, because they're slightly behind in their programme, and they're 2 years behind, so they're consulting on a revised timetable. The plans themselves, the directive itself stipulates exactly what the plan should address in terms of the status of water bodies that we've referred to, which is essentially the health of the water environment, and we assess that through various monitoring programmes. And then, having established what the status of the water bodies are, we are required to set the environmental objectives, which is essentially moving through a series of classes. We classify water bodies as either being bad, poor, moderate, good or high. And the objectives are then set against those classes. And importantly, I suppose, the plans reflect input from a wide range of departments and agencies I refer to, and indeed those outside government, and we work closely with a range of stakeholders. The plans themselves, and we've just listed there exactly the information that is included in the draft plans that we're proposing to publish. And I suppose that the key aspects are: what is the current state of the water environment, what are the objectives that we're setting, and what are the measures, i.e. what actions are we planning to take. And I suppose the caveat on all of that is subject to funding, as you've alluded to, Madam Chair, and that remains obviously a challenge, and indeed a bigger challenge than it was the first time round. In addition to the summary plans, there's a lot of supporting documentation will be produced, and that will be available on the agency's, that's the Northern Environment Agency's website. And essentially, the summary plan is to allow people to see those key aspects, current status, objectives and measures, and then a lot of information available on the technical detail for those who want to drill down into more information, and importantly, a lot of local information. So that people can go and look at their particular part of Northern Ireland and their particular river. And there's an interactive web mapping tool that allows people to do that. We've been doing quite a lot of work, I suppose, on a technical aspect of the plans, looking at boundaries around what are referred to as water bodies. But essentially, we were required to segregate the water environment into reaches of river or lakes or particular coastal water bodies, and we've been doing work just to rationalise that, and the plans cover the detail of that. And the other important aspect that we have been working on over the last number of years is that we have improved our assessment methodologies, and we've worked closely with other agencies. Sorry?
What methodology?
Our assessment methodology, so how we measure the water environment. So we have looked at biological monitoring techniques, and we work closely with other parts of the UK, and importantly, we have worked at a UK level with the rest of the member states in the EU. And the significance of that is, so if you're saying something is good, i.e. healthy, in Northern Ireland, that you have a similar view of what healthy or good looks like in France or Germany. So,
benchmarking.
So that we're comparing like with like, and that's really important in terms of a level playing field. So that work has now come through to fruition, and hence we have revised some of our standards. The objectives that we have brought forward, we have revised our projections for 2021. In the first set of plans, we had indicated that we were aiming to achieve good status in 59% by 2015 and some 92% in 2021. I suppose in light of experience, we've pegged back on our projections for 2021, and we've gone from 92 to 83. Sorry.
No, it's later on.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
And I suppose the significance of that is, and the reason why we've pegged back, I suppose, is that we haven't made the progress that we expected to do, but also we have made some progress. So therefore, in about 50% of the water bodies in Northern Ireland, we're currently at moderate, and the objective is to get to good. So we're just one class away. So it gives us some confidence in suggesting that we would aim to hit 83% in 2021.
And that's good status.
Good status, yep. And I think I've covered the figures there in terms of the numbers. And then finally, just to conclude, there's a range of mechanisms that we will use to deliver on the River Basin Plan objectives. And they include a number of directives, and indeed one of the key directives is the Nitrates Action Programme that you've heard the briefing on, and we'll cover that later. There are other opportunities that we're looking at, and indeed we're working closely with colleagues in Dard, for instance, through the Rural Development Programme, to see how we can help shape the new agri-environment scheme, bearing in mind the Water Framework Directive is an important part of what the Rural Development Programme, one of many important parts, but it is specifically referenced in there. And there's a range of other opportunities that we're looking to address, and we have listed some of those in the briefing. And they include things such as improved modelling techniques so that we can target sectors that we might require to do improvements. There's issues obviously around misconnections, where houses put in extensions and so forth. They often are an issue with misconnections going into surface water drains. And indeed, Decal, and we're working closely with Decal, for instance, on issues such as hydropower and indeed their fisheries management plans for Lough Neagh and Lough Erne. And finally, another key piece of work that's been done is the long-term water strategy that DRD has developed, and we've worked closely with DRD in bringing that forward. So that's another key building block of what we're hoping to put in place for the future. And I suppose finally, just to conclude, that essentially the plans are out for 6-month consultation, and subject to the views of the committee, we would propose to come back to the committee as and when the consultation is complete, and give you feedback on just what the consultation has produced by way of comment.
Yeah.
That's a quick run through, Madam Chair.
Okay. There we are.
Happy to take questions.
Sure. Thanks very much. You said you're confident by 2021 we'll get 83% of good status.
Well, I said...
How can we reach there from 29 at the moment?
Yeah, a very good question.
6 years' time.
I suppose...
7 years' time.
I should qualify. I'm not 100% confident, but I have confidence. And the reason in some ways that we have confidence is because 50% are currently at moderate.
Okay.
And when we revise the standards, because we've got better science, then between 5 and 10% of water bodies will now be at good that previously weren't, because we've got better science. So therefore, the confidence is underpinned by the fact that we're almost at good, but not quite. But it is challenging, without doubt, and the caveat on all of it is funding. And that remains a challenge across both DOE and indeed the other implementing departments.
Because we have stayed at 28, 29 good status for several years.
You're quite right.
Plateauing out without moving up.
At the headline level, it certainly hasn't improved, Madam Chair. Whenever we look down below at particular aspects of the environment, we can see improvements, and particularly on the nutrient side. So we can see that we're affecting change through the vehicles such as the Nitrates Action Programme, so levels of phosphate and nitrate are going down, and we're seeing that response in the environment. So, but you're quite right, at the headline figure it hasn't improved, and that is similar to the rest of the UK. In England they record a similar position, and indeed in Scotland they record a similar position. So
okay.
I suppose it's reflecting the challenge of actually affecting improvement. And I suppose if you think about it, under the Water Framework Directive, we're essentially trying to rectify problems that have been brought to bear on the aquatic environment since the Industrial Revolution. So in 6 years, we're trying to deal with pressures over the last 150 years.
You're right. Yeah, we've neglected it, for far too long. And I know the Nitrates Directive is probably going to help with agricultural pollution. It is the major pollutant to our fresh water. But I've also been told about septic tanks. You haven't mentioned in your actions. I've been told septic tank leaks into the waterways is a big, big problem. But DOE doesn't know how many septic tanks there are and what conditions they are, and many of them are not being inspected. So what's your response to that?
I suppose we do have a consenting process for septic tanks, which probably sets us apart from the rest of the UK, actually. And indeed, the Republic of Ireland are now looking to put in place a regulatory system to consent septic tanks. So we've been consenting septic tanks probably since about 1973.
Okay.
But yes, there are a number of tanks that we won't know their existence.
Historic
So we've
ones,
got
yeah.
some mechanisms in place to deal with that. One is that if we get reports of pollution arising from septic tanks, our inspectors will go and inspect them.
Okay.
And they will then check whether or not they have a consent from the department. And if not, then we initiate a process to get them consented and regularised. And another important vehicle that we have in place is, as part of the conveyancing for the sale or purchase of homes,
Okay.
one of the requirements is that you have a discharge consent.
Okay.
And that's a very effective tool because you can't actually affect the sale of the property unless you have a discharge consent. And that's an opportunity for us to
Right.
speak to the householder and get the situation regularised. But importantly, even if there's a consent in place, that we can check to make sure it's actually performing.
Yeah.
So that's a big lever for us, and it's very effective. And then the other third part of our
But
response.
they may not sell the house for many, many years.
Well, we are seeing signs. It is actually picking up, and we are. But you're quite right. It's limited, but it's very effective. And the other thing that we have done is that we have reviewed our consenting process, so that we have a risk-based approach to consenting septic tanks as a way of targeting those that we consider to be the biggest risk. And that's proved quite effective in terms of both improving processing times, but also getting to those areas where we think there are problems. And then, as I
How do
say,
you know which ones are at risk? How do you know? Intelligence?
well, we get a number of complaints from people who will complain about septic tanks, and then
and-
we are also able to identify. I've been doing a lot of work recently where we know the density of septic tanks, so we know areas where there's a high number,
Okay.
and we have developed a modelling system that would identify the parts of the country that there's a high density, and we would then look in more detail in those areas.
Right. Okay. Well, good to know. Good to know. Carol?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thank you very much, Gary, for your presentation. You're welcome back.
Thanks very much.
It's a while when you've been here, but I want to talk realistically about, the last time you were here and we talked about objectives. And I mean, to be honest with you, set ourselves a very high standard. I'm just wondering in terms of, realistic, achievable targets here. That's the basis I want to ask some questions on.
Okay.
Leaving the infraction side apart, right?
Okay.
Okay, realistically, we set targets there for 92% by a certain time frame. We know all the budgets, and even before this budgetary process, I mean, I think we were down on the scale. We weren't up on the high scale in terms of getting the monies forward to try and address these issues.
Yes.
As part of this new consultation, clearly you want to go forward and see if you're going the right way. Are we saying the 83% is realistically achievable with what you put in place? I know you've applied for consultation.
I suppose our position on this is...
Or is it gated by infraction?
Well, I think as we talked before, infraction is always a risk, and I suppose what we'll know from the Commission is whenever we report what we have delivered for the first cycle plans. So in 2016, I think we'll have a better insight into how the Commission are viewing what we're doing. In terms of what we're saying in the consultation, we're making a projection that 83% on the base of it looks realistic, and the uncertainty around that is the recovery time for the environment and also what level of funding you have to affect the changes that might be required in the additional measures. So there is a question mark over that 83%, you're quite right. And I suppose the consultation we would see will give feedback on that, and what we would propose then to do is to identify on a prioritised basis, well, if you have funding of this level, then you might look to do this additional work, and that's the approach that's been taken in the rest of the UK, that they've presented a series of scenarios linked to funding.
Right. And in terms of your proposed objectives, obviously there's a number of bodies you're working with, and partnerships we're trying to do that.
Yeah.
In terms of this new framework, is there any new bodies you brought on board, on how that can help, or any new ideas?
I suppose a couple of ideas, and we've been working hard. The Interreg 5 programme, we've been engaging very closely with SUPB, and that we've been successful in that regard, in that the environment theme is subdivided into a number of areas, and one of those is water. And we've been successful in negotiating with SUPB that there would be indicative funding in the water theme of environment of €50 million. And that's split into approximately 30 million to look at upgrading cross-border wastewater treatment works between Northern Ireland Water and Irish Water, and then about 17 million on catchment-related work, which is actually doing work on the ground to deliver the sort of improvements we're identifying you would need to do to achieve the objectives.
Right. And the point I asked about that was because clearly there's a border element to it.
Yes.
And working in partnership, and there's no point in us trying to reach a certain target and they haven't set theirs, or you know what I mean. So it's good that you're using Interreg. I mean, it's interesting that that's the way it's going. But I just wanted to ask, in relation to, would you not be safer to, and I just pose this question, you're saying 83%, would you not be safer to set it at, say, 60% and try and achieve that, as opposed to saying, we've set a high target, we hope to get there, but you may come back in 2016 and say, we're not going to hit that target. And I'm only saying to you in relation to, we've had 2 or 3 presentations in relation to this, right?
You have.
So we've gone now, and I'm not, say in terms of 29%, I know it sounds a low figure, but it may not, it's not, the water quality in some of it, it's not too bad, to be honest, you know. But all I'm saying is, I have this thing about infraction, these achievable targets, and pressure put on us, instead of working realistically to try and achieve a certain status by a certain time.
Yeah, and I suppose there's always a balance to be struck there. I think we have pulled back our ambition. We were at 92%, we pulled it back to 83%. And the balance, I think, is that the Commission take a view that you were meant to, as a Member State, achieve good status in 2015 across all the water bodies. And we've, unless there are technical or disproportionate cost reasons why you wouldn't do that. So I suppose they're looking critically at Member States to see that they're committed to deliver what the directive requires.
Bearing in mind this updates Member State to derogate whatever way, whatever they think.
It does, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I suppose as I said when I was in front of the committee before, in our view, with a certain level of funding and looking for other sources of funding, and we think European funding is where we'll have to put more effort, and I think Interreg is an example of that, but I think we need to push more on other funding programmes. Given that we're so close in large parts of the country to achieving good, then it seems to us that this is a sensible proposal to move forward with. But you're quite right, and indeed the consultation might bring some of this back, because previously we were challenged by environmental NGOs as not being ambitious enough, and equally we've had the same challenge that you're putting to me now, that we're being too ambitious.
But I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to be realistic in terms of. But if you're saying we can achieve 83 by 2021,
well,
we've seen all of this. I mean, we've seen all of it in the past in terms of obviously it's budget issues. You know.
And I think that's the uncertainty. So in some ways there is a recognition that in putting something out to consultation, we are clearly stating that funding is the key consideration. So therefore we do need to be managing expectations around this.
Yeah.
And leave it at that, Chair, because if things are so bad, the whole lot of us poisoned and all the fish in the country be killed in every river, but it's gone.
In terms of funding,
leave it at that.
What about Horizon 2020 under the environment stream? I mean,
Well, I suppose Horizon 2020 very much based on research-related projects, and colleagues in AFBI have been looking to bid into Horizon 2020, and I suppose we're working closely with colleagues in AFBI to see if we can support what they're doing under Horizon 2020, but it's more sort of research-focused.
Okay.
The other programme I think that we might be of use is the LIFE programme.
yes.
And I
Life
think
Plus.
Yeah, Life Plus. You're quite right, and we will be looking to explore further opportunities there. I suppose the Interreg 5 were attracted by that because it's not a competitive funding programme.
No, no.
Whereas the other programmes are competitive, and the challenge there is that the success rate is about 1 in 5.
You're
So
picking against
you need to be
others.
careful about.
Yeah.
We've got resource constraints, so if we need to be careful about where we're going to put our energies into, because we mightn't achieve any successful outcomes. Whereas Interreg, it's much more definite. And indeed, I take some comfort from the fact that we have been pretty successful in getting the level of funding earmarked that SUP have indicated, and certainly I've now gone back to the Commission on. So I see that as a real positive.
That's very good. Good to hear, because in the past you've been trying to get money through monitoring rounds and not getting them. So you're going at least, going through the monitoring rounds again?
Yeah, I mean, we'll continue to go through the monitoring rounds, and indeed, but committee members will be more aware than I am, as to the reality is
Interreg, you must stick to Interreg.
DOE is facing significant budgetary reductions. Other departments who we would see as co-deliverers are. But as I say, we are working with others. Rural development programme,
Okay.
we see as an opportunity, and the other area where there is funding, albeit it's under pressure as well, is the price control process. And we work very closely with Northern Ireland Water in developing their investment programme, and Water Framework Directive requirements are built into that process. So we're identifying priorities with respect to wastewater treatment works and drainage networks that we would look to see improved. So say whilst DOE mightn't have direct funding, we're looking to work with our other co-delivers to see if we can work in partnership so that they can use the funding they've got to affect some of the improvements that we're after.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean,
Well, this is important.
it's not
There is
particularly positive.
joined up work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Joined up
yeah.
thinking, joined up work. Yeah. Sandra?
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies for missing the start of this. And as someone relatively new to the committee, there's a lot I have to catch up on. But I just wondered, to do with river cleaning, does DOE and DRD and DARD, Agriculture and Rural Development, have they got together to formulate a strategy as to how rivers are cleaned here?
We would work very closely with DARD colleagues, and indeed the Nitrates Action Programme is an example where it's both departments are responsible for bringing forward the Nitrates Action Programme. We also work very closely with Rivers Agency, and indeed there are synergies between the Water Framework Directive and the Floods Directive, and we have an
I know it well. In South Belfast.
we have an interdepartmental working group that involves representatives of DARD, DCAL and DRD. So yeah, there's very close working, and indeed even as of yesterday we were meeting as an implementation board, and we're talking about are there opportunities for further engagement, particularly around attracting European funding.
I just thought it was, the responsibility of rivers is quite disjointed, and thought it would, be an impediment to an implementation of such a strategy. Do you find that the case? Yeah,
well, I mean, there are a number of different players in there. You're quite right. We see the plans, because the plans that we're proposing to consult on have had input from DARD, DCAL, DRD, and indeed the measures that you're seeing listed in there are reflecting the discussions with those other agencies and departments. So the Water Framework Directive and the River Basin Plans provide a good vehicle to get integration.
Right. Yeah. So it's working then?
Well, we can always do it better, but we have made big strides over the last number of years in working very closely, and a good example of that would be, say, around assessing river continuity. Can fish move up and down rivers? What's stopping them moving up and down rivers? And we have worked very closely in an interdepartmental working group with colleagues on Rivers Agency and DECAL to specifically assess which rivers are causing the most significant problems in that area. So, we've made a lot of progress over it, but we can always improve it. Accept that.
Good luck with that. Thank you. Thanks
very much. And I think the environmental crime agencies need to work harder too, to try to get the polluters to pay.
Well, I mean,
waters and
that is an issue, and indeed we have been looking and are now, when we take prosecutions, are looking for restoration costs. And to get the courts to award those, and then we will work closely with DECAL and others to see how we would spend that money to improve the habitat in those rivers that might have been affected by pollution. Yeah, absolutely.
I know, makes you want to weep when you see pictures of these dead fish and lying on the banks of certain rivers, and just to see such awful tragedies. Yeah. Okay.
Chair, do we have an update on where the worst polluted rivers are? Have you got that information?
Well, the status assessment that we produce, which is in the river basin plans, and indeed as an example, I don't know if you have a copy of the NABAN one, but when you see the maps in there and we show the colour coding in those maps, I think if page 24, page 20, 22 and 24 show the status of the rivers in the NABAN system, and we have that for the other two districts. So essentially we're looking for the country to be green or blue in terms of status, and where you see red, orange or yellow, then there are the areas that aren't in a good state, but in particular the red. So if there's red on the map, that's an area where there's a lot more impact in those areas. And then the orange, similarly, you've got impact in those rivers, and it works its way up. So we do have all that information, and that's part of what we'll be consulting on.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Chair. Thanks.
The big red area is Loch Ness, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've seen that before.
It's been red for many years and will be red for many years to come, because it is linked into eutrophication problems, and the challenge there, as I said, we are driving down the levels of nutrients that are coming into the environment. But there's real legacy issues in Loch Ness, and it will be many years, I think, before we see that improving. But the key aspect is to drive down the inputs, and then over time we'll hopefully see the benefits in terms of the status improving.
And that's the water 40% of our population drink from. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's a major source of drinking water in Northern Ireland. But having said that, the water is produced as wholesome, meets all the requirements. It's more the enrichment issues in the loch, which of course perversely is good for birds. So the birds like enriched waters, but we would consider that to be not a balanced system.
But I understand NI Water spend an awful lot of money in cleaning up the water before they pump out to us. Millions. Apparently they spend millions of pounds a year on electricity to clean up waters, or in the running cost to tidy up and clean up the water.
Well, yeah, I mean, they certainly have to affect treatment of the water, but I suppose if you think about Loch Ness drains 40% of Northern Ireland, so you've got a lot of water coming through agricultural catchments into the system. So I think we're fortunate to have such an inland source of water. But yeah, there are clean-up costs, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Okay, Ian.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thanks for your presentation. I just want to ask you, if you've identified a situation on the countryside where there's leakage coming from a number of septic tanks, that have consent forms, and they're of the old type, that were built and all of that. who's the responsibility with, for to ratify the situation there? Is it with yourselves or is it with the householders?
It's the householder.
Yeah, but then it brings the point they have got a consent, for discharge. So therefore, if you've give them consent, to discharge,
Yeah.
then surely the responsibility then transfers to yourself, no?
No, a consent is basically conferred on whether it be a householder or an industry or whoever, and it's basically saying here are the standards that you must comply with. So if we have issued you with a consent as a householder and we discover that your septic tank system isn't compliant with the consent, then you're in breach of a legal instrument, and the responsibility of you as the discharger is to make good the septic tank system, so that you come back into compliance.
So therefore, if there is this type of situation, is there any assistance from yourselves financially, to help people to do that? Because there are a number of people. I know of one particular incident there. There's a number of households involved, and there are people that have had consent. The tanks are in from the 70s or whatever, and they find themselves now, been hit with bills there, for between 5,000 and 10,000 if they want to upgrade their tanks. Is there no assistance there from?
There is no assistance currently, and you're quite right in the issue that you're highlighting. That is an issue, and I suppose, as I've said to the committee before, there is a socio-economic aspect to this. Often when we go to an area and find there's a problem with a septic tank, then the means of the householder to put good the problem mightn't be there, particularly in the current economic climate. Often there might be elderly folks in the house and have been there for many years. So we try to approach it sensitively. We're trying to get the environmental outcome that we're after, but we're also cognizant of the fact that this can be a big burden. One of the things that I think that we will be looking to do over the next year or so is to just look to see what would it cost in terms if you wanted to offer a grant programme.
Yeah.
How would that work? There's similar schemes, for instance, in terms of insulation. Government will give you a grant to help insulate your house through the housing executive. So there's precedent out there. Are there schemes at the moment to replace your boiler, for instance? Yeah. So I suppose what we're minded to do is to put some work into seeking to cost out what would be required in terms of monies if you were going to operate a grant programme? How would that operate? What would be the relative contributions? I think it's a piece of work that I think it's worth doing, and I think it helps inform it, because then you can have an open discussion. Yeah. People say septic tanks are a big issue. We have, I suppose, a slightly different view that we don't see it to be the most important environmental issue whenever we look across the piece, but it is a part of the pressure that's on the environment. Yeah. But if we cost it out, then you can have a discussion, at a political level as to, is this a right place to spend money, and how much money would you require to affect the type of improvement. So I think we would look to do some work in that area.
Yeah.
I think that would be welcomed by the public.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to go on about that. A number of houses having consent, from the early 70s. Planning have given permission to other houses. In the meantime, you have given consent, to those houses, to discharge into the same system. Mm-hmm. The system isn't fit to cope with it. So therefore, that's the point I'm trying to make. You're washing your hands of it, saying that the responsibility isn't with yourself. But the fact that you give consent, to more and more people, this here is affecting the whole system. So do you follow where I'm coming from here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I suppose we give consent for individual houses, and then if there's more than one house going into that, often those houses will probably be maybe housing executive owned, or else they're part of a private development. When you say with the system's overloaded, I suppose we require evidence that each septic tank is capable of performing as required. And if not, then we would expect a package plant to be put in place. And a package plant has a higher level of treatment and would allow you to discharge to a river. But you're quite right. I mean, there are legacy issues here. You know, the standards have tightened, and there are legacy issues that we need to deal with, and that's part of where this gap is. Do we know where all the tanks are? And we're systematically trying to work our way through that. But it still comes back to those who are making the discharge. The law is clear in that regard. I suppose the issue around, is there a part for government to play in helping people become compliant, I think is what you would test through looking at a grant scheme, and what does that look like, and then you would consult on that and take views, would be my view on that. Obviously, in the current economic climate, that's going to be difficult, but I think the work, it would be important for us to do the work and bring some further debate around the merits or otherwise of funding this type of activity.
Okay, thanks very much.
Absolutely. And I have seen a report on some experiment, I think somewhere in Europe, of actually discharging the waste organically through different kind of phases, different fields, planting the right plants to absorb the waste, and then coming out at the end of it being clean water. Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, we've been working closely with Northern Ireland Water and bringing sustainable treatment systems to the fore. So willows and reed beds. So up in Stonyford, for instance, they have now they've put in place a sustainable treatment system, which is a reed bed system, and then in another part of the country we've worked to put in a willow-based system. So that's a good example, and we would be keen to see that rolled out. And we'll be working with Northern Ireland Water, because it addresses one of the issues, Madam Chair, that you're highlighting. Northern Ireland Water have very high electricity costs, and we're a very rural setting, as you can appreciate. So these systems, they have a bigger land footprint, you can appreciate, but the operating costs are significantly lower, and we would be keen to see that developed in the future. It's more challenging if you try to do it for individual houses. But again, in the future, we think you might look at, if you have a number of houses in the catchment, that you could maybe put a system at the end of that and affect the sort of clean up that we would expect.
Organically and
it's a natural process, absolutely.
Lord Morrow.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at your I'm having difficulty accessing it on this tablet. I don't know why, but we're not able to get any of our rivers, waters into the high category, the blue area. There's none of it there, according to this map, except it's...
No, you're quite right, Lord Morrow.
And biggest area of it's still in the red, and we've discussed this in the past. The Lough Neagh, upper and lower Lough Erne are our biggest water basins. When, and I know I've heard what you've said in particular about Lough Neagh, when are we going to see any real change here? Or is this going to be a sort of a 20-year, 30-year programme? And I continually hear on the news, one river in particular, and if I was in that area, I think I'd be very annoyed about it, is the 6 Mile Water River, continually polluted. Why would that be?
Well, we've had 3 significant pollution incidents in the 6 Mile Water, one in 2008, one in 2011, and one recently, which is the one that was in the press. When we had the first 2 incidents, we put a huge amount of effort to effecting improvements in the mollusk and the industrial estate and other industrial estates, and visited every premises. I suppose when you say why is it happening, we're not clear as to what was the cause of the last incident. It's still under active investigation. There's a number of urbanised areas in the 6 Mile Water. It's not atypical in terms of the number of pollution incidents. When we look across the piece, we see a similar number. So I don't know if there's anything that is particularly unique about the 6 Mile system, other than the fact that those 3 incidents created a large number of the fish kills were significant. So I don't think it's atypical, really. That when I look across the piece of we look at the numbers.
About 25 years ago or thereabouts, there was a major scheme done on the River Blackwater, coming down through the Clare Valley, down to Caledon, etc. And the only thing, in my estimation, and I think it was at that time about a £6 million scheme or thereabouts. The only thing that I can see that it achieved was it turned the River Blackwater from a river to a canal, and the alleged alleviation of flooding downstream never actually happened. I would sincerely hope that we would never go back to that type of development again, because I'd strongly contend that if you interfere with the bed of a river, it never returns to its natural habitat at all. At least it'll take, I don't know, many generations to bring it back to what it was. And I would hope that in all your planning in the future, that that's not the type of scheme that you're planning to reinvigorate our rivers, which in my opinion are one of our greatest natural resources. And sadly I feel that they have been too often neglected whenever it comes to expenditure. Have you any plans to do any major work on any of our rivers anywhere in Northern Ireland?
In terms of drainage?
But in particular in Fermanagh South.
I suppose I should observe, Lord Burrell, that drainage is a responsibility of DARD.
Yes, it is.
And indeed, the Drainage Authority of the day, who did the scheme in the Blackwater, would have been in the predecessor of DARD. So DOE, we don't have drainage responsibilities. But
there would be some joined-up thinking, I imagine.
Oh, there's a lot of joined-up thinking. I suppose when you, rather than look to drain, and there are no active drainage schemes now, I suppose the pressure in the past was to bring land into agricultural production, and indeed, as you'll be aware that after the war there was a big push to get more and more land into agricultural production, and I suppose in some ways that's part of the legacy issue that we face, because we were very successful at it. We're more interested, Lord Morrow, in restoring rivers to natural. So the programmes that we're working on, and indeed you mentioned the Blackwater, we see that as a potential candidate for the future to try and restore it back to natural, but it's been significantly modified. But I think there's work that we can do. We work very closely now with the Rivers Agency and DECAL, and there's a lot more knowledge out there in the UK and beyond on restoring rivers to natural. We work very closely with the River Restoration Centre, who have built up a considerable body of expertise in this regard.
Well, then that's good to hear that. You might want to then restore or return the River Blackwater to what it was prior to the last scheme about 25 or 30 years ago. I think it was about 25 years.
I certainly am not offering to do that now, so I'm keen that the record doesn't show that Mr Nelson offered to do that. So it's probably beyond my gift. But yeah, I mean, there is a need to look at areas and see what we can do to bring the habitat back, without doubt. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. That's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Pam.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Been on the committee some time now, but definitely not very au fait with a lot of this, a lot of these issues. But I am a South Antrim MLA, and Fixed Mile is within my constituency, and it's obviously a big concern. And I was also out at the weekend at Glenavy River, who have also obviously suffered a fish kill back in June, and the anglers there are very concerned and think they know exactly where the problem's coming from. I'm just wondering, have you anything to do with, or do you have any comment to make for those pollution incidents which actually are prosecuted and fines handed out Have you any comment to make as to whether those fines are sufficient or whether they're sufficient or not to stop, willful pollution?
As you know, fines are a matter for the courts and the judiciary. So, as a DOE official, I haven't got a view on that because it is a matter for the judiciary. We are.
And yet you're kind of, may not have a view, but if the fines are not effective, you're fighting a losing battle trying to improve the conditions of the waters.
It's certainly fair to say that if you, and we do get some high fines. High fines, you could assert, would be an effective deterrent. And we have seen the level of fines increase. But the actual fines on a case-by-case basis is not something that we can have a view on because it is very much down to the judiciary. Our role is to have an effective enforcement policy, and we will proactively seek to prosecute individuals or companies who we find sufficient evidence against, particularly the sort of incidents you're referring to, where there are fish kills. There is always a presumption to prosecute. So we put a lot of effort into producing robust case files to send to the PPS, and indeed have been very effective in getting prosecutions, and indeed we compare very favourably with the rest of the UK and indeed the Republic of Ireland in terms of our rate of prosecution. But fines it's out with our control, and we're often challenged about the level of fines. And I suppose others who have influence might wish to make representations to those who have a responsibility, but it's not something that we're able to do. And indeed, we always, as officials, need to be very conscious of the role of the judiciary and how they view any suggestion that they might be encouraged to do something different. But we do work with them to raise awareness, so we have had active engagement with the judiciary to get across the significance of these type of incidents and the environmental impact, so at least those who are sitting in judgment on cases are fully au fait with the issues from our perspective.
Chair, could I just ask a supplementary?
And the policy of polluters pay. They need to pay to remedy the situation. I mean, we receive, committee members, we receive press releases from the department, and sometimes I read them as that so-and-so, Mr. such and such, polluted the water and got fined £250. And you just go, what? Slap on the wrist.
Well, Chair, just to be fair on that one, I know someone quite recently has been fined for polluting a river, and they got thousands of pounds of a fine. It was a massive.
We recently had a fine of £6,000.
Yes, it was a massive.
And that was quite a headline.
Yes.
So,
could I just ask the question in relation to where rivers are polluted? I take it you work closely with angling clubs, etc. Some of these angling clubs put in a lot of resources, a lot of effort, a lot of time. And do you assist them in any way to, for instance, where restocking is necessary for those rivers?
we'd work closely with angling clubs, and often, as you know, they might look to have a civil case for the recovery of costs, and particularly around restocking. And we have certainly assisted in some of those cases, and one that springs to mind, I think, where they were able to recover £27,000 of costs. And more recently, we're now looking as part of the case to seek restoration costs, and we see that as an important way forward. And then and there's an opportunity to work closer with the angling clubs around that. So there's a lot of dialogue that goes on, and indeed, if we take an effective, successful prosecution, then we can provide our information to the clubs if they want to mount a civil case for cost recovery. But we think that what we're now focusing on is, as part of the case, to seek restoration costs, and we're testing that at the moment through the courts, and we see that as being a good way forward.
Chair, I'm not sure whether I need to declare an interest or not. I'm a member of an angling club, not any on any of the rivers that have been mentioned here today.
Could I just come in with, I know, like Morris mentioned, anglers and that, and I know that anglers are a great asset to the NIEA too in notifying
Absolutely.
of behaviours or suspicious things, or indeed early indication of a pollution incident. Do you, I presume you actively encourage that and work with as many of these groups as possible so that you can be there on site as quick as possible to gather any evidence and that might lead to prosecution?
Absolutely. We have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year water pollution hotline, and we advertise that widely. So we have people on call. We rely very heavily on angling groups and others. We have a number of stakeholder groups up and running, and the angling groups play a big part in that. We have bilateral meetings, but you're quite right. They are on the river and will often ring us and be the first to ring us, and we see that as really important in getting that quick response. So yeah, they're a key part of what we do. Yeah.
But Pam, I don't think you were a member at this stage. The committee went out to 6 Mile Waters and we met some of the anglers along the river. They go out, I think, on a daily basis or very frequently to check out the quality of the water and inform the department if they see any deterioration. Yeah. Very good. Very good.
Yeah, it's an initiative, the River Fly Partnership. Maybe invite Wendy to sort of tell you a little bit about that. A really good example of working on the ground with people.
Yes, what we have is a system that's been set up, which is a simplified version of what we would normally do for our biological monitoring, which looks at the insects that are living in the river and can give us an indication of water quality. And we've now got, I think it's 6 or 7 different groups that have been set up and trained in using this simplified version of sampling for the insects in the river. And they can go out once a month, subject to river conditions, because obviously sometimes the flows would be too high and would prohibit it, but they can go out once a month and check. And if they pick up any changes, those would be referred to us, and we can either sort of double check that, or if necessary it gets referred to our colleagues, the pollution teams, that would then go and follow up on that. And it's a very good way of engaging. It doesn't, as we said, originally it was the Anglers Monitoring Initiative, but now it's sort of rebadged as Riverfly, because you don't have to be an angler to participate. Yeah. Any of the groups that are interested, if they can seek the support from the Riverfly Partnership and get a scheme set up.
Good. Then you have the eyes and ears on the ground.
Yes.
Local people letting you know. Yeah, very good. We're very impressed with the scheme in the 6 Mile Water. People were very keen to talk to us. And, yeah. Okay, that's all. You're going to talk to us briefly about the consultation, about the synopsis of responses on the nitrate directive.
Yeah,
and you've received some comments, and you are making amendments.
Yeah, and I'll maybe invite Eamon Campbell, who heads up the water policy side in DOE and has been the lead on developing the new nitrates action programme for DOE. So.
Okay.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'm project manager for a joint review group that's 2 departments, DARD and DOE, and we've been working for a period of about 18 months on this review to bring forward the new nitrates action programme. There's quite a lot of technical changes, but it's all could be summed up as fine-tuning. There's no radical changes as such. We're not going back to basics or that kind of thing. And the main outcomes what we're hoping for, and we've got very positive feedback from stakeholders. We've gone through, as I say, a lengthy review and a number of consultations with stakeholders, but geared towards obviously protecting water quality as a primary objective, but also improving farm efficiency and nutrient management. And most important of all for the farmers, I suppose, is that it's cost neutral. There's very little additional cost to farmers as a result of the proposals now within the new action programme. We're obliged to review the action programme every 4 years, and the threat of infraction was mentioned earlier. The Commission, we have a derogation as well, which we benefit from for certain intensive farms that are able to apply more manure to land. And without that derogation, there would be millions of pounds of costs to those farmers. And indeed, there would probably be fines under cross-compliance and removal of direct payments, or a proportion of direct payments. It could be 20–30 million pounds. So the overall costs are very, very low in terms of moving from one programme into the next. So the next programme is about to start next year.
Okay. Okay. Any questions on that? No. Okay. Yes, Sandra.
Thanks, Chair. That derogation is due to run out soon, isn't that right?
It is indeed, yeah, at the end of the year. There's 150 farms benefit from the derogation to allow them to apply greater volumes of manure to their land, 250 kilos of nitrogen per hectare. The normal limit is 170. So we have been, my team has been negotiating with the Commission, jointly with DARD, and we have been given an indication now by the Commission that they're reasonably satisfied with our proposals and that we can go forward to a vote on the 11th of December. So I'll be going to Brussels then, hopefully for a positive outcome.
Okay.
So under what criteria would they get the derogation or exemption? Yes.
Yeah, the derogation mainly applies to intensive farms, well, exclusively, actually, intensive farms. So it's large dairy farms tend to make best use of it. So they can apply the manure to the grasslands, and it's like a closed loop, I suppose.
Okay, thank you very much. I just was hoping to get an update. I was so that's that.
I suppose I would just add the vote in December would be to renew the derogation.
Yeah.
So which is really.
And we'd expect them to look favourably on that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. If I can just put this question to members: that are you content for the department to refer the regulations to the executive? You've got your briefing. Yeah. Okay, members, we're content then. Thank you very much. Okay. So thank you for coming and answering on two. Question: one bird for, or one stone for two birds. Is that? Thank you. Well, don't certainly encourage people to kill birds. Absolutely not.
My thanks to the committee.
There's the banner headline for tomorrow.
We'll not quote that.
No. I have a garden and I'm so cross with seeing dead birds and neighbours' cats coming into my garden, catching my birds. Yes.
You got the cats too, Tom?
Yeah. Oh no. Don't like cats. No.
All right.
We'll not put you on that either, Madam Chair. I think we'll now leave.
Thank you.
All the best.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You did not hear what I said.
No. Our lips are sealed. All the best.
Okay, let's move on then. Yeah. Now, I'm just trying to find where are we. So we're 14 now. We're back to now. We have Susie with us. Sorry for keeping you back quite a bit, Susie. You're going to talk to us about the EU funding.
Yes.
Right. You have a research paper. Members at page 600. Okay, if you can talk us through. And, yes, sorry, that's a table paper from Susie as well. And, at 75 in your pack. And also we have EU infraction schedule at page 609 as well. And the department has provided a response from our query previously, asking for more information on the lengthy delay in relation to possible infraction proceedings on the Water Framework Directive. So, okay, members. Susie? Yep.
Okay, thank you. The briefing today should actually tie in with some of the points that were made by Gabriel Wilson from the department. Basically, it addresses competitive EU funding drawdown by the Department and the role that it takes in securing such funding. It also highlights a few areas that the committee may wish to seek further clarification. Now, competitive programmes are financed directly by the European Union's budget. Proposals are submitted for approval directly to the European Commission. Those submitted compete with proposals from all Member States, and successful ones are selected after a comparative evaluation is carried out. Now, the Northern Ireland Executive's Programme for Government sets a target for a 20% increase in the drawdown of competitive EU funding since the 2010/11 baseline of €13.4 million. Now, this figure has in fact been revised from the original €11 million baseline highlighted in the paper. So rather than going through and into all the details of funding programmes that are potentially available, I'm going to focus on the main points of the paper, which essentially highlight two main areas in relation to how the Department contributes to achieving the PFG target and how the Department facilitates others in drawing down funding. So others include arm's length bodies, NGOs and institutions. Now, just to draw your attention, the beginning of the week during question time, Junior Minister Jennifer McCann stated that at the halfway point in the budget period, a total of €41.3 million has been drawn down by departments. Now, this represents 64% of the overall target. She stated that departments are well on track to exceed the total drawdown of €64.4 million by the end of March 2015. Now, looking in more detail at the Department's contribution, I could ask members just to turn to the tables that are in your tabled papers. The first paper is on departmental drawdown, and the figures answer a question that has been proposed on page 2 of the paper surrounding the Department's contribution to the overall target. It shows that to date, the OE drawdown is around €1.4 million, which is about 3.5% of the overall total across departments. And if we look at the second table, which gives a breakdown between each department and associated arm's length bodies and third parties, it shows that of the total DOE drawdown, only 2.7% is actually made by the department itself, while 84.3% is by third parties and 13% by arm's length bodies. When the drawdown target was agreed, it was agreed that drawdown from arm's length bodies and third parties could count towards the target based on two criteria: that the department could demonstrate that measurable and significant departmental effort had been expended to assist in leveraging the drawdown, and that the arm's length body or third party confirmed that they were content for their drawdown to be counted towards the executive's target. Figures from the table suggest that the department contributes the least to the overall DOE drawdown. The committee may wish to ask the department for more detail as to why its contribution is so low in comparison. However, in correspondence to the committee, which is detailed in the paper, the department explained that it is not always eligible to apply for all programmes and will provide assistance to others applying for funding. This brings me on to the second part of the paper, in relation to the department's facilitation role. The paper explains that the department proactively engages with others in relation to raising awareness of possible EU funding opportunities. Now, these may include other departments, councils, universities and further education colleges, research organisations such as Queen's Quaestor and AFBI, businesses and other organisations like Wrightbus and Action Renewables, just as an example. One of the department's facilitation actions is to obtain advance information received from the European Commission and the Bureau's desk officer in relation to details of calls for projects. This information is disseminated electronically to stakeholders and in face-to-face briefings. Now, it is evident that the department's facilitation role is an important element in contributing to the DOE total drawdown figure. While the paper on page 4 gives one example of an approach used by the department in relation to a workshop, more detail from the department on the process used in general may be of interest. Page 4 of the paper suggests a number of questions in relation to who the department engages with and how it identifies stakeholders, and whether it monitors the progress of stakeholders so as to assess the effectiveness of its approach. And the final part of the paper looks at specific departmental targets in relation to drawdown. While there is an overall PFG target, the DOE business plan for 2014/15 does not make any direct reference to contributing to this target, both drawing down funding directly or providing a supportive role to other organisations to enable them to do so. In fact, there does not appear to be any specific departmental target set in relation to contributing to the overall target. This raised questions at the end of the paper in relation to whether the department sets itself specific targets and how it monitors its contribution to these targets so as to measure its performance and effectiveness. Now, I appreciate that this is a very brief overview of the department's role, which it appears is mainly as a facilitator rather than directly applying itself. The committee may wish to pursue more detail from the department in relation to its low level of direct drawdown and how it informs and assists others in applying for funding. And thank you for listening, and I'm happy to discuss anything further.
And I think, first of all, the criticism is that in the first place, the executive did not set a high enough or ambitious enough target. And then the departments reached the target so early, and now they already don't feel they need to do anything more. So it's to the detriment of all of us. I think you have certainly set out a number of very pertinent questions that we should forward to the department and ask them to brief us on this. So, any other questions for Susie? Very good paper, Susie. Thank you.
I understand some of the points that I made at the beginning weren't in the actual paper, so I can update that as well. So.
Chair, just in relation to the researcher said that the junior minister intimated that they were well on course to draw down the total funding, I think. Did I quote you right there?
Yeah. For the
doesn't strike me that
the target is so low.
Well, even as low target, it doesn't strike me that they are at this stage of the financial year. Is that what you did say?
Yeah, they're actually they've met 64% of the overall target at the mid halfway review.
Yes, but on a very, and I mean the point that was going to, what you have made, Chair, was at a very low target base. What
20% increase.
Represent
from the
how much again, did you say?
2010-11, it's about 13.4 million.
I'd have thought that
it was originally 11 million, and then they did increase it to 13.4.
Still, compared to the Republic of Ireland, well, it's just shocking.
Sure.
We get something like £35 per head.
What can we do as a
of benefit from the EU money, whereas down south it's 500 something pounds per head or something like that.
Chair,
the difference is just amazing.
Chair, what can we do as a committee to encourage a bigger call on this fund? I mean, it is only petty cash whenever you compare it to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a shame that it's not different.
Yes, Carol.
Chair, one thanks Susie for the paper. The question I've always asked in relation to this, and there is a lot of opportunities in Europe to draw down funding. Just obviously how you go about it, and I think the suggestions in the pages there and asking questions of the department is grand. But the key element for me, and maybe I don't know if Susie's done any work into this here. See, in terms of if you take the presentation this morning in terms of Water Framework Directive, if we don't get them targets or we don't get it up to a certain status, right, Europe's saying they're being infracted. But there should be funding there to address those issues or assist in some way. And through some of the packages, funding packages, there I always believe there has been funding packages there in terms of Interreg and everything else to work in partnership to address those issues, be it Water Framework Directive or the Nitrates Directive, whatever department that is.
Yeah. And they're saying they are tapping into Interreg.
Well, it's minimal to what they're actually achieving, because in terms of the South, I think here we've brought in 50 million. Now that's right across the board in European funding, and they brought in, I think, 500 million euros. I mean, there's some change in terms of how the funding is thrown down.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, and some of the suggestions here Bruce has made is right, but I don't think the department's tapping in or working in partnership to tap into the funding that's available.
No. I know they said, well, the competitive strain is not easy to get. 1 in 5 get it, but we need to up our gear to get to that level that we can apply and successfully get the grant. You know, it's not good to say it's very competitive. Only 1 in 5 gets it.
But sure, there's certain themes even on that Horizon 2020. You know, and life and some of the waste management programmes. There's certain themes that the government, the department should go after.
Yes.
I mean, that's
Horizon 2020 is worth, what, £85 billion? Something like that?
Yeah. Take 50% of that.
Yeah. So, yep, we'll put those questions to the department members.
Yeah. Okay.
I know time's moving on.
And Chair, it's just a wee bit ironic, but I think we have to say it in maybe continuation of ourselves. I see here that there's a seminar or something next week, is it, in McGee?
Yes.
You know, unfortunately, we'll not be there.
Yes, I know. I was just thinking, Susie, but you won't be able to go, is that right? Will you be able to go on behalf of the committee, maybe? Yep. This is, members, I was going to mention to you, there's an invitation at page 637 to a workshop on Horizon 2020 funding. It'll be held next Thursday. So, I mean, can Susie
next week
go on behalf of the committee? And then come back and brief us on it. That would be useful. No more questions for Susie? Okay.
Sorry, Cal, just in relation to you were saying about the Interreg funding, there's nearly 2 questions that you could pose in relation to, obviously, Interreg 5, it's non-competitive, so it's pre-allocated. So, you know, the process that the department then makes to make a bid into that. But the questions in this paper are just looking at the competitive funding. Right. So the ones that the department might apply for itself or might assist others in applying. Now, the paper did, the figures here show that the department the figure that it contributes to drawing down is quite low, but associated arm's length bodies and third parties are high. That it would, you know, these are the ones that it would facilitate.
But see, just to the Chair, see in terms of the likes of if there comes a directive from Europe in terms of assisting people or departments or even private business, you know, reach those targets. Is that kind of funding? Have you looked at any? Because I think there should be something there to assist people in adapting to change.
Yeah. The logic is.
Yeah, I mean, if there comes a directive, I mean, you have to assist people to meet those
comes with the
targets,
resource.
those needs.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. And we'll just quickly move on to another thing on page 609, that we asked about the EU infraction schedule, and we asked in particular members about the Water Framework Directive. In a nutshell, they're saying, well, we've tried our best, it's up to them to come back to us and say, you know, whether they want to take further action. So, members, you content to note that? Okay. Right, and then we just, the EU manager has also drawn committee's attention to a list of invasive species to be drawn up by EU. That's in her EU newsletter, provided by our new EU Affairs Manager, Shauna. Okay. Then we'll move on to correspondence at page 611, members. There's a cover note on that, is that right? And then just draw your attention to page 643, invitation from Beacon Consortium to visit an energy from waste plant in County Meath. So it's kind of like a day trip. I think we can do that. Yeah. So members, would you be interested to do? It's similar to the Brussels and the Germany. And the German one, Capelon,
Hope the trains are better.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll ask staff to look into the details. Next one is correspondence from the Finance and Personnel Committee regarding the draft budget 2015-16 at page 645. The committee is seeking a submission from the committee for a coordinated report on the draft budget 2015-16. It is preparing. So, members, a briefing has been scheduled with departmental officials on this topic on the 27th of November. So, would members be content if we send a response after this briefing?
That sounds
okay. Then, members, just to ask you to note items 17.3 to 17.5, and also tabled 2 more items for noting there at page 79 as an invitation to a conference this Friday from the Belfast Healthy City. Unfortunately, I have a number of meetings on that day. It's a bit too short notice to ask us to attend. On Friday of this week. Members, is that okay? We decline this invitation. Then at page 81 is a letter from the used to be called Tidy NI, is now Make Northern Ireland Beautiful, and also with a marine litter report, the booklet you all have. So enjoy reading it. And okay, members, and forward work programme is at page 671. Members, are you content to note?
Great.
Okay. No other AOBs? Okay. No any other business. And then next week's meeting, same time, same place. Thank you very much, members.